And we are live. Thanks everyone for popping in and giving us a view here tonight. I'm here with my good friend Billy the Goat, who is kind of one of those very psychologically involved person when it comes to the behaviors and the psychoanalysts of human nature, let's say. Because the other day we got onto a stream together and we stopped right at the end when it came to the PUAs and kind of analyzing their thought patterns and why they do what they do. And afterwards we did a bit of a after party, and me and Billy, despite being exhausted, ended up going on for another 2.5 hours. And unfortunately, I didn't record the conversation and couldn't. So I begged him to kind of come on and try to start over and bring back what we were discussing offline together and share it with you guys. And I do understand that Hammerhand has got a stream up, and I believe Undead Chronic has also put up a stream for today. So we'll try not to keep it too long because I know everybody's going to want to go over there. And we really wanted to touch base and kind of go through a very specific list on narcissism in today's age. And like I said, this conversation that we had going on for like 2.5 hours really kind of opened my eyes to it. And we talked about men going to therapists, and Billy himself is training to be a therapist. So we kind of really struck a good note here, and we wanted to share it with you guys. So without further ado, Mr. Billy the Goat, thank you for joining me, sir.
Thank you, Emperor Chris, and everyone in the chat for joining us here this fine Saturday evening. Hope you're all well.
Yes.
Um,
Well, sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So the Pandora's box of narcissism. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Get your notepads out ready, fellas. This is going to be pretty in depth, and we talk about rabbit holes. Well, we're going to be going very deep with the rabbit holes.
Yes.
We're tunneling to China. Um, Now, I suppose as a quick overview, the PUA aspect, like Richard Cooper, Jack Murphy, many alike, and not just PUAs, but this is the same category as um I was gonna say charlatans, but they are charlatans. Like life coaches, mentors, prophets, spiritual healers, all this kind of like virtue signaling sort of we're going to get you we're going to provide you with the answers you need to be able to go on in life. And this is where it kind of rubs me up the wrong way, because when you've got people who are trying to be legit therapists or counselors, it puts a bad rap on that industry. So the whole psychological field, going on a slight tangent here, the psychological field and the therapists that are available, there are good ones out there, but they're very far and few in between. It's being overrun by this narcissism trend that we're seeing.
Yeah. And this
So
feeding off of people's vulnerable side, I know we spoke about it with a couple of the guys on the stream there before it ended, that we had some good results come from therapy and some bad ones, right?
yeah,
Mostly we get a lot of bad. These are therapists that want to keep you there for the rest of your fucking life. 3 times a week, we'll see
yeah.
you here. That'll be $250 a day.
See, in
And
that kind of sense, I mean, like the idea of therapy and getting therapists, getting help, getting a psychologist, a psychiatrist, etc. These are many people who are helping you do better and get you recovered and healed, etc. and things like that. So those who are lucrative and exploitative and capitalizing on people's vulnerabilities and weaknesses, you know, it's in my eye, it's a sin to try and call them therapists. They're doing the opposite. So if they're trying to moonlight, I mean, this is the way of the covert narcissist, is to hide under the veil of more socially acceptable, not say exploits as in like exploiting people, but ventures or whatever, and masquerading
Mhm.
like the wolf in sheep's clothing. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
so they're pretending to come in good faith, and they're pretending to try and help you out. But as we go deeper into it, obviously that's the last thing they want to be doing.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to touch base on this because you brought it up. I mean, we look to our government to basically mandate certain things. They mandate our driver's license, our insurance, and stuff like that. Even though they're separate entities from insurance companies, they also do use these therapists in the same way, right? Even from physiotherapy to psychological therapy, they essentially make things mandatory when it comes to, like, if you've gotten in trouble with the law, you've got anger management, or youth therapies, things like that. And generally, I haven't seen anyone come out of those with anything beneficial. Most people that I've known that have gone to, like, anger management therapists come out more pissed off than when they went in. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
obviously there's some kind of a government involvement to most of these therapists. And how long is it going to take before, because I mean, we've noticed all over the world that countries are saying, hey, our birth rates are down. Men don't want anything to do with our women because we've set up the law to be so unfair for men that they basically walk the fuck away, right? Like we have. And now we're almost to the point where we're going to make it mandatory. How long do you think it'll be before PUAs become mandatory government enlisted fucking organizations?
Well, it's not out of the realm of impossibility. It could happen very soon. But how successful will these PUAs be? Is the bigger question, and it's the same that applies to the therapists and these programs. And let's say you're in trouble with the police, and they put you on a education program to try and improve your awareness or whatever.
Mhm.
It's all on paper. It sounds like a good thing. But what it's showing is that there is a huge lack of understanding in what these services are meant to provide, and that's not just um, a misunderstanding of the services, but there's a misunderstanding, it would appear, within the institutions of these services. Therapists don't even know how to be therapists. Psychologists don't know how to be psychologists. PUAs don't really know how to be PUAs. So there's gonna if we really want to be doing a positive change for society in the future, there needs to be a complete overhaul, working from the ground back up. What does it mean to be these things? What do these concepts and terms actually fundamentally mean? Because we see it plenty of times, like you just pointed out, people will go on these programs, they'll go into therapy, and they come out worse off.
Yeah, well, and that's what
Yeah.
I was saying when I linked the anger management guys. It was government in place, right? Because the law is based on the government's requirements. They're government backed. The results are essentially, you went through the class, you signed a piece of paper saying you went through the class, you jumped through our hoops, and you still went out more pissed off than when you came in.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
really, we didn't help. We just say we helped, and on paper it says you're cured.
that's right. Yeah, I mean, a good way of looking at it, I suppose, is in a medical field where um, a lot of medicines, and I'm sure you can attest to this, Chris, with your background in chemistry. A lot of medicines are based around poison and toxins. So if you give someone the wrong dose, instead of healing them and fixing them of their illness, you'll kill them.
Yeah, everything in moderation. I mean, you
Right,
can you can OD on Tylenol. You can
right.
OD on aspirin. you know?
So there needs to be a proper awareness and understanding of the drugs you're administering, how they work with the body, and how they're deployed or delivered to the patient. So there's a element of surgical precision involved.
Mhm.
So there's no point me saying to you, for example, now let's bring this into like a therapy scenario. There's no point me saying to you, "Oh, you're lacking in self-esteem. Well, you just need to love yourself a bit better." That doesn't do jack shit. That
Yeah,
just
but
that just
yeah,
sends you off with this arrogance of like, "Oh, now it's all about me, and I'm just going to love myself miraculously back to health." it doesn't work like that. It
No,
kind of,
but we've seen it on paper, Billy, where it doesn't matter if they actually help anyone. As long as they say it on paper, it'll still get the backing that it fucking needs to keep going.
yeah,
You know what I mean? The beneficial results are an afterthought. Everything that is involved when it comes to therapy and our government-based therapies, especially, it's all based on how many people can I get in. You
yeah.
know what I mean? Because I'm paid by the number. It's just like how social workers work.
That
They don't.
that make yeah. So that
They
makes it even more problematic because it's not really about the patient's well-being. It's about either the money or getting the numbers in or keeping the institution running.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, like right now we all realize, well, at least everybody here, but unfortunately, they still get a lot of attention. It's these PUAs and these $3,000 fucking, Richard Cooper fucking programs, they don't work. And it's until these reviews were removed off of like Reddit, that's the place that I found them. Until they were removed, everybody that had actually used these guys' programs all said the same thing. If they weren't true believers, just like, Christians or a religious-based group are, if they're not true believers, then they look at it, go through the program, and say, "This was bullshit." But a
Yeah.
true believer is gonna go no matter what you show them or what they go through, they're gonna say, "This is what's benefiting me," you
Yeah,
know?
different degrees of damage going on. I mean, people who have paid the money and have gone and realized that it was a scam or a shambles. They probably got it. They probably got the least amount of damage because at least they were aware. So they're essentially like damaged by $3,000 down.
Yeah.
So an
It's a
expensive
one-time thing.
an expensive lesson. Maybe they went twice before they realized. So either way, it's an expensive lesson to learn. But in some ways, luckily they managed to learn it. In the end, kind of thing.
Yeah. But
Um,
the true believers, they never leave, even when they fucking given everything.
that's right. Which shows a much deeper level of mental illness going on. They might be going to a PUA in the hopes of ultimately to pick up a woman,
Mhm.
or to improve their self-esteem, to have some extra masculinity. But if they are dependent in such a way where they're having to use denial to not see that they're being exploited and taken advantage of, then those are much more pressing issues. Those are the underlying issues, um, more severe than the esteem or masculinity problem.
Mhm.
In some ways, not to make it sound light-hearted, but if if you're if you're being taken advantage of in such a way that you can't accept the realization of it happening, because I wouldn't be surprised deep down they know they're being exploited, but they're at the mercy of this false promise of masculinity. So they'll stick it through. They'll be like, I'll keep paying because the goal here is I'm going to eventually get that masculinity, or I'm going to get that self-esteem, and I'm going to eventually get that woman. So no matter how much it costs, how long I have to go on this course, I'm going to, and no matter how much I have to sort of deny reality, that I'm being duped and played along here, it doesn't matter. I'm holding on to this with a death grip to this reward, which they're not going to get. That makes it even sadder. Is that
Mhm.
it's a false promise. So there's it's 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 the carrot being dangled to torment them and make them feel worse and less and more and more deficient. And they're not going to look at Richard Cooper and be like, "Hey, motherfucker, you haven't got me the woman yet." They're gonna internalize that frustration and be like, "I'm not doing what Richard is saying I should be doing. This is my fault, not
Yeah.
him. I
Yeah.
need to I need to book some more classes immediately then to sort that out." So it's kind of like we see how it goes from a bad situation to a much worse and worse and worse until it's fatalistic. I mean, imagine like you're so hooked in um, this paradigm that you're investing your life savings, you're putting your house on mortgage or whatever. You're not eating because you're trying to give money to a crook.
Yeah, and I mean, these guys all state like on their live videos and stuff like that, they're stating like, "Oh, results guaranteed." But then, of course, as soon as you try to, go in there for one of their sessions, it's like, "Oh, well, results may vary, and really, it's dependent on you. So your presence here is basically fucking worthless."
Yeah, I mean,
It's
there's a
like anything. There's no guarantees and fuck all, but they don't mind making the claim, and it's the open claim, right? But once you come in, there's a disclaimer saying this is not a guarantee.
yeah. I mean, the way they operate with the total sort of like lack of empathy and things like that. I mean, in some ways, they can worm their way out of any legal case,
Hmm.
pretty much. I mean, or any kind of disclaimer, or just any, because people like that, people who are narcissistic, they're not going to be responsible and they're not going to be accountable. So he could just turn around and be like, "Look, you didn't have to book classes with me." And there you go. So whose fault is it? Not
Yeah,
mine. It's going to be yours.
yeah, and it's not like they're registered. I could say tomorrow I'm a pickup artist. What qualifications do I have? Not a goddamn thing that can be proven. I can tell you that if what's his name, um, Anthony, the guy who Chronic went after the other day. Anthony slept with 1,500 plus women. Well, I've slept with 3,000. So I guess I'm more qualified than he is. Can I prove it? No. Can he? No. Okay.
Yeah,
There you
it's
go.
not. It's not so much. I mean, when these kind of qualification, when it comes to the art of a salesman, that's because that's what these people are. These are con artists. So
Yes.
part of the con artistry is to have a good sales pitch,
Yeah.
right? So
So, I
that's
mean, it
so
doesn't
that
cost much, Billy, to go get some pictures with some attractive women. It really doesn't. I can go to
it's
any bar, pick up the
yeah.
hottest women, say, here's $5 each for a drink. Come have a picture with me.
That's not the primary. That helps to sell the pitch,
Yeah.
um, but that's not the primary tool that they're using. They're, it's their charm and charisma. That's the primary. It's the appearance of what they're the facade that they're presenting. So yes, pictures of girls or pictures of cars, pictures of
Mm,
wealth, nice clothing or whatever. These all add to the package. The imagery that is being sold to you. It's like this is how they're targeting these young, especially like the younger minds or the
yes.
more impressionable or the naive, is they're trying to paint an image of what your life could be like. So you're not
If you follow my 10-step program, this could be
the
you,
exactly. So I mean, but this
even
is
though
it's fundamentally a picture. It's an image. So it's not reality. They are not selling you a reality. They are selling you an illusion. So when you buy into this, you've already the person who's bought into it has already it's almost like their fate is sealed
yeah,
because they've now stepped out of self-agency, self-control. They've stepped out of reality for this promise of living in a fantasy that doesn't exist. And then they have the expectation of having a girl in reality. No, you're now crossing backwards and forwards through dimensions.
the Bob's got an excellent comment there. You don't even have to give these girls money. They just want it for the fucking clout. I mean, look at how that Chicks Gone Wild was. They never paid any of those broads. They signed up willingly. And Chicks Gone Wild or College Girls Gone Wild, that ran for years, right? Money wasn't even a requirement. Now, maybe not as much, and depending on what you're trying to sell at a bar or an event, it might
Yeah.
require at least a drink. But I mean, to 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 pull off a facade, a fake setup, fake lifestyle, is fucking not that hard.
No, no.
We've seen women getting caught standing next to guys' really nice cars, and then they would post it on Instagram and places like that
Well,
as if it's their car.
so think of a car uh, sales lot, and the salesman, for whatever reason, has a few shitty cars they need to get rid of.
Mhm.
If they're a good salesman, a good con artist, they're going to be able to sell those shitty little cars, aren't they?
Yeah,
So
Yeah, absolutely.
it just so that's where the true skill of a con artist sort of takes its full effect. It's not the product. It doesn't matter what the product is. It's the artistry, like a magician. Like once you know the tricks, it's no longer magic.
Yeah.
So this is why it's kind of like with a magician. It's what do they call it when like watch, keep your eyes on this hand while they
Oh,
sleight of hand,
sleight of hands. Yeah.
sleight of hand, and things like that. Deflections and smoke and mirrors and all this sort of stuff. And that's where
Yeah.
the real the the secrets sort of lie. That's where if the audience were aware of these tricks, then a magician would be crap.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be magic anymore.
I would have to say with that description, a PUA is like a magician that's also a pickpocket. It's like, hey, look over here in this hand while I slip your wallet out with my other hand.
Right? Yeah,
You know
definitely,
what I
definitely.
mean? That,
And the
that's
thing is,
essentially what they are. They are the
yeah.
new pickpocket magicians.
Now, this whole PUA element that we're talking about with taking advantage of people, taking their money and selling them a false dream product, this is just a tiny aspect of this person's overall narcissism. You know, they're not going to limit themselves to just taking advantage of young men. Like you pointed out, they'll take advantage of women and get them to take photographs with them. They'll take advantage of their friends and their family. So narcissism isn't a kind of like an on-off switch. When you're in the mood to be a bit narcissistic, you can just switch it on. It's a constant every moment of a person's being.
Hmm.
So even if they're on their own, they will still be behaving with narcissistic tendencies. And it's out of their control because fundamentally they're a narcissist. This is their personality style. It's who they are. So if we've identified someone who's being lucrative in one aspect, like with a PUA, you know, it opens up an investigation into other areas where they're like maybe they're tax evading, maybe they're counterfeiting money or something like that. Maybe they're into stolen goods. Why be for that person who wants to take advantage of people? Why limit themselves in such a way? They clearly demonstrate if there's a weakness in people's armor, or they're vulnerable in some way, they're entitled to exploit it. It's like serve them right for being vulnerable and weak.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of wanted to go back to what we discussed in the after party. Essentially, um, we brand certain traits like competitiveness and personal achievements over others in a tribe, and we went all the way back to caveman days. And as I stated to you, it's almost as if we all have narcissism in us, and narcissism should be listed as just as much of a trait as competitiveness, right? Or say a desire to lead, right? But at the same time, in history, it was in check because although yes, we could fight off, the local tribe next door or the cave down the road, um, and steal their women and their belongings, we also had trade agreements, even with other tribes, where that had to happen. We had to have a limit. You know what I mean? We had to get along at some point with the people around us or the people next door. But in today's society, not only do women and like it's in all of us, men and women, but before it had a halter on it. There was
Uh,
only so far you could go, but today it's like it's a free for all. It's
yeah.
completely unhaltered, and that horse is running away in full fucking steam.
Well, in today's modern era, it's been cultivated as well. So back in the olden days of the caveman, yes, there would have been some narcissist, but not only would it have been more under control and curbed, um, because once these behaviors were being excessive, these members would probably get kicked out of the tribe. They would be
Exactly.
they'd be punished or something like that. Um, so not only did you have that, but to be fair, there probably weren't as many narcissists like per percentile of the population, because statistically, in the way the psychological field had looked at it, narcissism is something like only like 1% of the population.
Well, that's
It's
where I kind of
it's meant to be minuscule, hardly,
I
rare.
that's
Rare would you bump into a narcissist kind of
that's
thing.
where I kinda disagree. I mean, after our conversation the other night, I
Oh yeah.
came away with as if we all have it. It's
Well, this
just
is
as it's just
yeah.
like having red blood cells. We all have it. But
Well, okay,
when
all
it's
right.
under control, you use it in moderation, right?
So okay, so to clarify it then a little better, just so that we're all kind of clear. So we're looking at a spectrum, and yes, we all have narcissism, because without it, none of us would be alive. Because narcissism is a little bit like where it's how your self-esteem gets its kickstart in life.
Yes.
If you didn't care about yourself, or didn't think highly of yourself, you wouldn't give a damn about yourself. Well, then you'll just die, because
Yeah,
what's the point of caring? So you need
exactly.
that. So this is why babies and youngsters have narcissism. They put themselves first before other people, because they haven't got to develop, their mind hasn't developed enough to a point where they can accommodate other people's needs. So it's all self-serving, and it's all going to be thinking about themselves as the center of the universe. So
Yes.
this is normal, and it's a healthy thing. um so we're looking at a spectrum as well as a maturity scale. So in children and young kids, adolescents, etc., this is normal and expected to see. Narcissism, fine, great. Where it's become a problem for wider society and what we're dealing with now is how it's crossed over that boundary where these youngsters haven't matured to a point where they now control the narcissism, where they regulate how they feel, and they sort of self-police in that sense, that they're the ones that keep their own narcissism in check, and but without that, I mean, this comes from your prefrontal cortex, where your forehead is. Now if that isn't developed or nurtured enough, then there's nothing really stopping the narcissism from becoming basically tyrannical, from taking over. So instead of you controlling your emotions are now controlling you.
Yes,
And this is
so
why we see a lot of childishness in these people, because they never crossed that bridge into maturing into adulthood. So they
yeah.
remain stunted as children. So
Well,
they
and that's
remain stunted as narcissists.
essentially we're all growing up like the spoiled child syndrome.
Yeah. Or Peter
Spoiled
Pan
child
kind of, yeah.
syndrome doesn't end at childhood. It gets taken right into adulthood and beyond. And
Yeah.
not only that, but it's encouraged throughout all of the system right now. I mean,
Definitely.
we see people shilling lies about this dream life that they say they can sell you on, when really the only person going to get a dream life out of selling anything they're saying is them.
Yeah. I
None of
mean,
this is from you.
can we take it back, because we're flying into the modern era
Yeah.
narcissism.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We
Like,
If we go back to the sort of Stone Age era, and as society is developing, um, so narcissism on a spectrum, I think the diagnostic is something like, if you have 5 or is it 7 of the traits, you then get labeled as an NPD. NPD is a full-blown narcissistic personality disorder. So there is a difference between someone who has uh, a couple of these traits, and they might be along the spectrum of narcissism, but they haven't quite reached that point of full-blown NPD. So there is a difference so we can work with people who have narcissistic traits. We can work with people who are somewhere on that spectrum.
right.
People who are full-blown NPD, I mean, I suppose technically you could somehow still work with them, but that's basically as extreme as it gets. Um,
Right. You
and
work
that's,
with
and
them
that's
at your own risk.
yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
if you know they're an NPD and you're messing with them, like what are you doing? You have to start wondering about yourself at that point, really. Um, but so it makes it muddy waters in a way. So when you're dealing with someone on the spectrum with certain traits, you're trying to work out which of those traits are they. I mean, there might be someone who overall is actually a decent guy. It just so happens that they have a entitlement characteristic about them. So as long as you can kind of keep that in check, you could pretty much they're passable, they're acceptable as functionable members of society.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, I kind of compared it to like we all have violent traits in us. We can all become violent in certain conditions. Now, having control over our violent nature, which that's what it is. I mean, our nature to commit acts of violence, it's just nature, right? It doesn't have to be the wild animal at the fucking door type of thing. It could be the person you just had a disagreement with, but you control your impulse to basically lash out with physical violence, even though you might be thinking it.
Yeah,
Where narcissism and the behaviors that come with those traits are in us all. And right
yeah.
now, they're completely unhindered. You know what I mean? Like it's just a free for all. It's like if you woke up tomorrow and everybody came to you and said, "Hey, Billy, the world is all together in this. You are now completely free to do whatever
Well,
you want."
this is where it gets frightening, because back in caveman day, you might have someone with just one or two characteristics, fine, and they lived their entire life with just these two characteristics. Yeah.
Mhm.
So okay, they got a bit of narcissism in them, but whatever. What we're seeing now is, if you take that same kind of person with the two characteristics, he won't limit himself with just the two, or she won't limit herself with just the two.
Yeah.
There, because there's such a lack of boundaries, and the narcissism in a way has evolved along with humanity.
Right.
So it's not to sound too quirky or kooky or whatever, but if we consider I mean, basically the narcissism is the ego that's taken over. It's almost like the gremlin on your shoulder, or it's almost like another entity of a person influencing this individual. But this entity that is narcissism, or the ego that is narcissism, has twigged over the years, over the centuries, that being limiting with just two traits or however many traits isn't really going to be, if you're someone that's trying to exploit and rule the world and the universe, why would you stop yourself there? You would want to be like Pokemon and have it all.
Right. Well, and that's where I kind of think we've all led
So
to.
so what has happened over the years has, as narcissism has evolved in an arms race, it has decided to sort of, well, if I'm going to be entitled, if I'm going to be grandiose, then I'm going to also do all these other things, not thinking about the consequences, but basically it's going to evolve to such a point that no longer is it on the spectrum, it's at the far end, it is now NPD.
Right.
And what we're seeing today, nowadays, I'm frightened to say, is that I don't even think we're seeing largely just NPD, because that in itself is also limiting. I'm seeing this narcissism now thinking, well, I need some nuclear weapons, so it's now in recruiting other disorders. So you're going to have a narcissist who sees the benefit of being psychopathic, who's going to see the benefit of being histrionic, and is going to see the benefit of being bipolar or
Hmm.
whatever, or Munchausen syndrome, or things like this, or it's going to see the benefit of maybe anti-depression, because then it can garner sympathy and play victimhood. So
And we're
why
seeing that. We are
exactly,
seeing
exactly.
this is real
It's
time. We are seeing this shit in real
it's
time.
it's anything goes now, because
Yeah.
so from a point of view of a power hungry megalomaniac narcissistic ego that's gone out of control, it's in their best interest to have they'll look at it as a skill set, every skill set of mental disorder as much as possible, because
Yeah.
from their point of view it makes them strong, it makes them more, it protects them essentially. Because this is the funny thing, for people who are so power hungry and control freaks, is to compensate for the frailties and vulnerabilities and insecurities that they actually have.
Yeah.
So
And this
all of these mental disorders are looked at as forms of protecting themselves. This is self-defense. They're looking at it.
and in this very modern, very easily, livable world that we're in right now, I mean, we don't have to fucking fend for ourselves. We don't have to produce our own fucking, day-to-day foods or products. We are living in an extremely comfortable time. So right now, your narcissistic behaviors are allowed to run rampant. You know what I mean? It's not even like back in the 18th century where, you know, both men, women, and children all had to work together to basically make it through a day. Forget making it through your life, a day. You know what I mean? And you had to set boundaries or your life would be terrible. Even if your nearest neighbor was 50 miles away, if you were confrontational with that neighbor all the time, well, you now the next person you can go to for any kind of help or in a trade system, it's 100 miles away. And most people didn't even travel 100 miles in their lives back then. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I mean, like traditionally, it made sense to have things like boundaries and limitations and restrictions. It made sense to have morals, ethics, principles, values,
Hmm.
um, and it was functional. But I mean, this might be a bit of like a chicken and the egg kind of scenario. But if so, let's look at the area between caveman and modern era.
Hmm.
So we're seeing a rise of um, narcissism. It's it's there are more people developing and showing signs of it. Um, Other factors that will increase the chances of someone becoming narcissistic. Remembering that narcissism is a survival mechanism to ensure the person's survival rate. So if they are struggling in life, if they are not understanding how the world functions, and they're mystified at the what they're seeing around them and things like that, they're very confused, they're disorientated, um, they've got a lot of anxiety about the future because they haven't got their life together and stuff like this. So they now become more and more vulnerable, more and more survivalistic, and they regress back to more infantile mindset. This isn't even looking at narcissism at this point, really. This tends to be what will happen to any person who is struggling and the world is collapsing. They will regress back into infantile, because when you're a child is when you're at your most safest.
Hmm.
Um, Responsibility isn't on your, like, the children don't have responsibility. The parents look after the children. So when someone is getting squashed in such a way, they're becoming more and more vulnerable, they're becoming more and more survivalistic, they start trying to offload their responsibility because they're trying to be a child again. They're wanting other people to look after them. They start becoming more victimhood. They become more impulsive. They start to lose their sense of identity. I
Hmm.
mean, this is a whole huge amount of problems that go with this. They lose their self-esteem. They lose their individualism because they're losing their identity, and they start adopting like a hive mind or herd mentality, which will later develop into a hive mind. Um, but dangerously, they'll lose empathy for, because if you're in a survival mode and you're worried from day to day, like, are you going to live? You're not going to have time or space to think about other people's well-being. I mean, that's a contradiction. How can you look after yourself if you're busy looking after other people? So your empathy goes out. And then, so this paves the way for narcissism. I mean, there's nothing to stop the narcissism from taking over. And in fact, it's actually welcomed at this point, because you've got nothing else nothing in your toolbox to get you back on your feet and to pull you out of the gutters. And so your last and final desperate tool in the toolbox is to turn into a narcissist.
Yeah, and I've kind of noticed that some of these people almost develop I guess a sense of like bipolar. Like when everything is, something's going well for them, they're all happy go lucky. The world is their fucking toy box. But if the slightest bit of reality pokes through, because I mean we all have bad times during,
Yeah.
day, week, year, month, whatever the case may be. When a bad time shows up, they don't know how to handle it. And
No,
they go
that's right.
into like a phase of like complete full
It's
on depression.
Yeah, it's more. I mean, bipolar is spread out over like weeks and months. So you'll have like a couple of weeks of mania,
Hmm.
uh, then you'll have there's a name for it, but a stable period, and then maybe a couple of weeks or months of depression. So it's the ups and downs as you're describing, but it's spread out over a long period of time.
Yeah,
And,
but I
and the
mean, it's an
mania,
extreme case of ups and
yeah,
downs,
yeah. I mean, the mania and the depression those phases or stages, you can see psychosis coming into these people, and it's dangerous as well. I mean, we obviously know how depression can be dangerous, but someone who is in a mania, they're in a high, they're overly confident, and it's such a good mood, is also dangerous. An easy example of this is, imagine going drinking for the night and you're on a binge, and how do you feel the next morning? So obviously, like, a drinking spurge as a mania, described as a mania, isn't exactly a good thing. Now, borderline personality and bipolar often get mixed up because they're pretty much, in many ways, very similar. Ups and downs, mania and depression, mania and depression. But instead of it being spread out over weeks and months, I mean, a borderline could be up and down several times in one day. Every half an hour, they could be changing. Their moods are constantly, they never stay put. So much more erratic in their swings, and that's a borderline. But what you're describing is I think we're more accurately connected to addiction. So that
I've seen it a lot in women that were never diagnosed with any form of bipolar, and they're young women. You know what I mean? It's like that supermodel that fucking ended up jumping out of the building or something, or committed suicide in some way. Beautiful looking woman, had the world on. The world was in her hands, and because time had obviously taken over, she went completely bipolar and then jumped out of a window. You know what I mean? I've seen young women that aren't in her position, but you can almost see them going the exact same way.
Well, it's a slippery slope. Mental illness and mental disorders is a slippery slope, and especially if I mean, like with bipolar, it can be treated to it. I can't remember which one. You got to be careful. You want to have an accurate diagnosis, because if you give antidepressants, say, to a bipolar, is it 1 or 2, you could basically mess them up, and do them worse. So if there isn't an astute physician diagnosing these people, they can really screw them up in terms of, especially if they're giving medications or just giving them the wrong treatment. So we've got an element of that going on in today's culture, where people either aren't getting diagnosed, or they're getting the wrong diagnosis, or things are being missed out, or whatever, or their condition changes and it's not being monitored or reported. Circumstances are changing. But as a general blanket kind of statement, if we're dealing with people with mental disorders, and if they're not being cared for closely, their conditions easily get worse. They get out of control. I mean, in some ways, like we were saying earlier, that the mental illness is a form of protection in a way. So this is kind of like a last resort. This is a way that the brain has had to figure out a way of survival other than the normal healthy way. They weren't, for whatever reason, the brain cannot function and operate in a normal capacity. So it's had to find an alternative method to go about life. And it does this by using we describe it as a mental illness, but from their point of view, it's salvation. They've got nothing else.
Right. I just want to interrupt you here for a minute, Billy, and welcome Angler MGTOW. We weren't really going to open up the chat, but because he's finally got a connection, I just wanted to say hi, buddy, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Chris.
How are
you,
Billy? My friend?
Once again,
Angler, how are you?
I'm good, bud. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad. I'm not bipolar. So, sir, did you have a question or anything you'd like to add to this? Because I know you mentioned on a couple of your videos there, the behaviors or the traits, I guess, of these behaviors were kind of similar to your ex.
Yeah. It was actually, what was it, like 2 nights ago, Billy? We had a pretty in-depth conversation about these things, and you know what, fellas? Just keep talking. I've been listening to a lot of it, and it's been a lot to take in. And I've had responses to everything you guys have been talking about. But I'm just going to sit here and listen to you guys talk, and then maybe I can work my way into the conversation. If that's
we
okay
will.
with you guys.
I had plans to open it up towards the end. We just wanted to cover a bunch of topics that we went over in our after party chat that really should have been live.
Uh-huh.
Could have saved us this whole day. But yeah, no, I want to bring guys in if they want to ask questions and whatnot, or give their opinions on it. And I just wanted to mention, because we're here, I am sitting at 99 subs. So whoever hasn't subbed, I need one more to hit 100. So get on it.
Come on, guys.
Come on, man. That would be awesome though if somebody could do that. But yeah, Angler, I definitely want you to come back in, because there's a few things that me and Billy actually mentioned you and a couple other guys the other night, and I really wanted to kind of get your insight on it as well. Like I said, I know you've dealt with some of these, these specifically things we listed out were kind of like hand in hand with a few things you had mentioned on your videos.
Sure.
And like I said, I'm pretty sure a lot of guys that essentially have gone through what we've gone through are all going to be able to pick out these traits, maybe even in ourselves. I don't think men are immune at all. Obviously we have PUAs.
Well, right? Nobody's immune.
No,
but the one before I exit, one thing that's very important that you talked about, Chris, was that we all have narcissism. And narcissism should not be looked at as an unhealthy trait. You have to have a certain level, but you can't let it get out of control. And, going back into what Billy says, when it gets into full-blown NPD, which I don't think that's what we're really seeing right now. I think we're seeing high levels of narcissism. But if we had a bunch of people walking around with an actual personality disorder, we'd be in much more trouble than we are. But the narcissism, it's getting too high. It's not in check. So,
it's not. No. So One Fast Act has given me the 100th sub. I thought he was already subbed.
Go Dak.
You were a racist up until now. But yeah, no, you're right on the money there. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought with that.
Sorry, borderline has been recognized as the winner, if you want to, out of the what disorder are we dealing with the most? It would seem to be borderline.
Yeah, and I mean that's something I mentioned a while ago, where it's the new AD, what is it, ADD? How back in the 80s they basically started diagnosing all these children with ADHD.
Yeah, mostly boys. Yeah,
mostly boys. Yeah,
you're right. Yeah,
putting pills in them, and it was everything then. Oh, the kid sneezed. Oh, he has ADHD. Here's some drugs. The borderline personality disorder is thrown around, but yet it's tied to nothing. It's like it can't be used in a legal way. It can't be used in a medical way, other than just to list them as that. Now, I could be out of date, like we had mentioned before, Billy. We talked about this. I'm pretty much out of date on the whole where it falls, but I don't think it's used in any legal term anymore, other than the fact that that's what you're listed as.
There's okay, so this will be a recap of that conversation. So traditionally, narcissism was thought of as being a male-dominated illness or whatever. Most narcissists were considered to be males, and at the time, there wasn't much awareness about this idea of a covert narcissism. So when it was looked at, when it was being studied and published, it was typically a classical, grandiose, traditionalistic view of narcissism being represented by males. And the argument was that they didn't want women to have the stigma of being called narcissists. So they came up with the idea of calling them borderline, which by the name border is it's an area between neuroticism and pathology. or psychopathy. So it's already in a gray zone by having a kind of, you can't quite pinpoint it. It's a merger of two other disorders. So this would be the borderline woman. But I've heard people say, and it causes a bit of controversy because not everyone agrees with it. They say that a borderline is a failed narcissist.
Yeah, you mentioned that. We discussed how essentially the traits are almost identical, but they can't be completely listed as a narcissist because they don't fall into so many traits, or they don't carry so many traits. It's just like labeling someone as a sociopath. Well, they have to have so many out of a list that can link you to being a sociopath.
This is where the deep dive into education really helps a lot. It helps navigate through these innuendos and nuances of what these terms mean, so for example, like how this can be quite mind-boggling for newcomers to the field is, although borderline and narcissism can be considered two separate disorders, there is a narcissistic component within the borderline.
Mm-hmm.
So so what that means to say is that someone who is a borderline, they're BPD, as part of their characteristic set of their personality style, like there is a component like one of their faces or one of their traits dealing with, typically it would be like a defensive reaction, will be dealt with by narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
So this narcissism component within the borderline is different to the narcissism we're talking about as a separate diagnosis.
Right.
So that makes it much more confusing, because it's a type of narcissism that works under the umbrella of borderline as a overarch.
I think at the end of the day as well, it comes down to being able to simply identify behavior in people and knowing that you should stay away from them. But at the same time, I think it's important to learn these labels, depending on where you're at with what you're trying to do and what you're trying to figure out. Labels help. I mean, regardless of what anybody says, it helps to put a label to something at first.
Yes, but I mean, when they put a positive spin on labels, even if they are considered what are disorders, and makes them less functional in the modern world or in any fucking day-to-day world, you've got a serious problem. I mean, we've essentially, I guess we've lightened the idea of having a mental disorder to the point where it's almost super beneficial just for clout chasing, even at the very minimum, that everybody is willing to admit that they have some kind of mental disorder.
Yes, you bring up a very valid fucking point there, Chris.
There is an element of that where there's now like a pride or whatever achievement. Yeah. But this is again, why would they be so proud to be narcissistic? It's because they got nothing else to be proud of. They're scraping the bottom of the barrel that much. It's like the victimhood. It's like, well, if I'm going to be a loser and useless at everything, I might as well take some pride in that, and I'll be the best of the losers or something. Like, I'll be the top disgraceful, disgusting person and vile person I can be.
Yeah, well, look at those people that were eating Tide Pods and shit. I mean, they did that for clout chasing and fucking gluing their hair to their head with Gorilla Glue. I mean, now, so they got recognition, and that's all they needed.
So on the one hand, I mean, look, on the one hand, is and like what Angler's saying, it's good to put a label on things, right? It's good to have an understanding, especially at a stage in life where you're confused about your own position in life. So before looking internally, people will tend to look externally, like, where do I fit in with everyone else? Never mind with myself. So when we're confused and disorientated, it's a natural reaction to look outwards to work out to get your bearings, to work out what's going on. Like, where is danger? Where is it safe? So you're looking outwards. So it's understandable to be so interested with narcissism and psychology and all this sort of stuff. It's normal. It's very common, and it's understandable because at this point, I mean, this is what I call red pill, basically. Um, I keep saying I've got this video that I'm coming out with an explanation of pills from a clinical point of view, but um, it fits into this conversation where I'm discussing now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
go ahead, add it in.
like the blue pill, being naive, living in dreamland, is the victim. You know, the average Joe on the street, and they're reliant externally on their survival. So they white knight, they simp because they're hoping to be taken care of. These are people like who pretend to be the nice guy or empaths and things like that.
So if I do enough, you'll love me, essentially.
Right. Right. And they're very, they got a smile on their face, but deep down, their actions are very manipulative. Now they've got no sense of self at all. Their sense of self is through the people they help. So when they get connected to a narcissist, the narcissist carries their sense of self-esteem, essentially, as like a body snatcher.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of weird because I mean we've all seen people being called everything under the sun online or even in public and stuff like that. And this past Christmas, right, when I was essentially setting up those gift bags for the local kids, the thought process was that this is going to be great, the kids are going to love it, and then all of a sudden something kicked in. And I had to ask myself, do you think people are just going to assume that you're here to clout chase? You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't even do something good for the local kids without even running that thought through my own head. Well, how are people going to view this? Are they going to think I'm a pedo? Are they going to think I'm doing this just to kind of get some recognition in the area? I just wanted to give gift bags to the kids with my tips. That was it.
That's what being brought up by narcissistic people, that's what it does to your psyche.
I wasn't brought up by what I thought was narcissistic people, but I think I've been around them long enough.
I would say you're right. Yes.
I mean, and then you're self-doubting and you're questioning your own legitimacy. So, I mean, it's good to sort of keep this. I mean, that's kind of like checks and balances you're doing to yourself, and you're just touching base and things like that. So, that's self-reflection. So I mean that's a big no-no for the narcissist. So you can't really say, oh, maybe I'm being a narcissist because I'm self-reflecting. No, that's a contradiction. You're not. In fact, because you're self-reflecting, that's one of the reasons why you're not a narcissist in that sense. But going on. So with the blue pill, their world, their fantasy crashes down and they become red pill. And I describe this as a maturity flow. So the blue pill is very much a baby. The baby needs looking after, right? So a blue pill is a baby. A red pill is a bit more adolescent, and ultimately the black pill has a bit more maturity about them. Now, a lot of people have been shitting on the black pill lately, but I think what I describe as a black pill is totally different to what they're shitting on. So I want that to be cleared up at some point. But so this red pill is an adolescent, and an adolescent is still dependent on the external world. This means the red pill is very externally based. When the red pill does self-reflection, now, in my opinion, they are transitioning over to the black pill, where the black pill is internal.
Mm-hmm.
So red pill focuses on external, wants to change the world. Their focus on control is by trying to change the world. The black pill is more internal and is trying to change the world inside their own mind. Now I was going to tie this into your point before we started talking about this blue, red pill and black pill, about people jumping on the bandwagon, making it fashionable to have these disorders. So the majority of people would therefore seem to be very externally based. Only a small percentage actually are internal based. So self-reflection, yes, is internal, but there's a split, and we are living in the age of the split of the uh, switching and splitting. So yes, you could. So a red pill, for example, who would do self-reflecting might be doing self-reflection with the intent on how that changes the external world.
Right.
It's not really because they're trying to change themselves. They're trying to change the external world and recognize to do so, they need to do a bit of self reflection. If they're truly doing it for their own improvement, then I would argue those are black pill sentimental thoughts. He's slipping into the black pill there. He's trying to control his internal world. But so this fashion trend of um, this dependence on the external clout chasing, as it were. Um, we already made a point that this is their currency. They haven't got anything else really. They're going to need the attention or bragging rights or clout, and it's an addiction. Going back as well to the other point you were saying, Chris, about how they're elevated or ecstatic when they've got their drug of choice, when they've got their attention or
Yeah,
their.
they get their dopamine fix and they're super
But
high.
but it never lasts, does it? Because no,
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 it
no,
doesn't.
no, no buzz ever lasts. So they're always in a deficit. They're always stumbling. As soon as they get it, they lose it, and then it's a chase to get it again. And then as soon as they get it, they lose it. So they never really have possession of it. It's a fleeting moment of happiness. It's never held for more than a moment.
Hmm.
Um, and that kind of like think about addicts they need their fix. It's very agitating for them. It's very annoying, very frustrating. They get very, and they're angry because of that frustration because they want to get that fix so desperately, and so their addiction along with their emotions is violently pulling them along in pursuit of that high, whatever the drug of choice.
Well, and this kind of ties into another question that I wanted to ask you, and it's basically based on the difference between men and women. Like I stated, I believe we all have that narcissism in us. We've all kind of agreed with that. It's just about how it's, haltered or, allowed to run free. And right now in this modern world, especially, we have noticed that women are extremely bad at handling this drug. It's not like they dabbled in it. They went full on OD essentially. And I believe that they are now, not that we're not on the same level, but you can still reason with a narcissistic man, I find, because the logic and reason is still in his DNA. But for a woman, when it becomes unhaltered, it is now all there is. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Like their
All right.
entire world revolves
Yeah.
around
All right.
how
So,
that drug works for them.
well, that shows you the level of sort of dependency. Now, the narcissist that you can reason with to a certain extent, this could be described as the cerebral narcissist, and I suppose the covert to some degree as well. But they can recognize to some extent the transactional love. Well, they've learned their idea of love is through transaction. So very much when you're dealing with a narcissist, it's very businesslike. I do this for you, you do this for me. I get this out of it, and okay, you might get something out of it, but I'm going to make sure I get the better end of the deal here. So as long as if you got that, if you bear that in mind when you're dealing with someone that is a narcissist, that they're going to be looking at this as some sort of business transaction where they get the better end of the deal, then
Mhm.
typically you can kind of do business with them. You can have a kind of business relationship with them in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, but you can't make a, well, I mean, I'm not saying you can't on anything, but it's very difficult to make a day-to-day, everyday relationship with them. I mean, I've worked for guys who were just as narcissistic as some women are and self-entitled.
Yeah.
That we worked together for years, never had a hiccup, and then all of a sudden they basically betrayed me right on the spot. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, it just shows, I mean, if they were truly are a narcissist, it just shows that the time you had leading up to then was part of the sales pitch or the illusion or whatever. So it might seem like everything was on the up and up and okay, but that doesn't mean they weren't a narcissist. They're still a narcissist. It's just you weren't on the receiving end of their abuse at that point in time, or they weren't stepping over the boundary at that point in time until it eventually did happen.
Yeah.
So they were always it's basically they were wearing a mask, and when you caught on, it's like, oh shit, what am I dealing with? That's when the mask slipped. So you were being strung along from from day one, pretty much. You know, it just wasn't. It just didn't really affect you until it did.
Yeah, no, and like I deal with a lot of agreements with men, and you know, some women.
I mean, narcissists like a transactional deal. Like you would have had something on offer, so we call this fuel or supply. So if you were giving them fuel and supply, there would be no reason for them to disrupt that, because otherwise, if they disrupt it, you know, that's fuel being cut off. Especially nowadays. I mean, look how much the price of fuel is. So, so if you're giving fuel to them, no problems, then they're going to be buddy with you. But if you're for some reason pulling back now, you're not giving them quite the fuel you once did, or maybe someone else has come along and they're giving a higher level of fuel than you are. Now their need for you isn't so much anymore. They don't really need you anymore.
Yeah,
and this is where we start seeing them to devalue and disrespect you and things like that.
We have a whole old saying here in Canada, you know, because we have Native Americans here, essentially, right? Native Canadians, Indians. There, I said it. Fuck it, I don't care. But like, you can't make a deal with them because there's no such thing as a deal with them. You know how they like to use the old excuse that we didn't know what a contract was when we sold our country to you for, you know, fire, water, and fucking gold. They take that right into today. They all have that mentality. You cannot make a deal with a native that is over long term. If it's not instant, because they only believe in the instant, right? So if you prepaid something or for like a time period, there's a good chance that the second they're out of money, they're going to break that contract and ask you for more money to continue on, or to, you know, bring somebody else in because they're paying them that day. You know what I mean? So no contract is valid with a native, and I don't care who disagrees with it. It's just the way it is. You might find the occasional outlier, but they're not the exception. They're just the exception to the rules. They're not the rule themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, a narcissist has a clever way of looking at. I don't want to say clever, but they have their unique way of looking at a contract. I mean, the problem with a contract is you're holding them accountable. You know.
Yeah.
So they're not going to like the idea of a contract. And so if there was a contract and they did sign it, and you were trying to hold them accountable to it, then they'll, you know, number one would be they'll deny it. Oh, I didn't sign that. You did. Yeah. You faked my signature, or I was dead at the time. You know, or that's not a real contract. You know,
you racist.
Yeah, and things like this, and then it'd be like, oh, you know, if that doesn't work, oh, I'm a victim. So you're not going to win when it comes to a narcissist. It's built into that survival mechanism. You know, like, I cannot lose, because if I lose, that equates to me dying. So no matter what, even if I have to use magical thinking, even if I have to make things up, deny, flat out, blatant deny, you know, like, I've got the proof, I've got the evidence. It's like, it doesn't matter. They'll still deny because they have to. Because if they admit to being wrong, to them, this equates to, well, we fucked up. We're not going to survive. This must mean we're about to die. And it's ridiculous, but it's that drastic. You know,
I think a lot of this starts with what you talked about a few minutes ago about the dopamine hit that, these people get. And we have to understand how developmentally arrested that they are, where they were stuck in childhood. And it's kind of like the same thing, you give a toddler a sucker and then you yank it out of their mouth. What kind of a reaction you're going to get?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the way these people, like, if it's in their literal race. Like, it's what they've dealt with. They don't have to be held accountable for anything.
They weren't able to develop.
Our government has backed them up on that.
So
if you
there
were,
you go. Yep.
If you had a native come to your town who was living on a reserve and he murdered somebody, he goes back to his reserve. The police don't fucking chase him.
Is that right?
Yeah, they say we'll deal with it. He's our people.
And what happens over time when that kind of thing happens is that they learn. They
walk the next day.
Right, but they learn. I got away with it.
Yeah,
and that's where that dopamine comes in. So they think to themselves, "Well, I can do it again and again and again." They gave me an inch, I'll take a mile. So this is where we have to take a. This is instead of the narcissist being the evil doer. This is where we have to sort of take a bit of responsibility and acknowledge that we let this shit get out of control.
Yeah, exactly.
We were too placid and gave into these people. That's where our responsibility sort of lies, and that's some of it anyway. But you also, so you're making a comparison with the narcissist, making a deal with a narcissist and a borderline on their addiction craze. Like you could reason with a narcissist to some extent, but with a borderline, especially someone who's like addictive in that kind of attention-seeking kind of way, there is no reasoning. Which, as we unpack, it will make sense why because if you've got someone who is impulsive, they're a slave to this craving of theirs. They've got no self-control in that sense. I mean, it will be to their own detriment. Like the tyrannical ego doesn't care about the person, the body it's living within. So if this ego says, I want you to rob, steal, and do all this stuff, and it's not going to have any care in the world if the person ends up in jail. So they'll do reckless, crazy behavior on the fly of the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've seen that. Where I'm living. Like, I used to live in Alberta. I mean, we saw them do that. They knew there was going to be no consequence for them at the end. So they came to our town, did whatever the fuck they want, and just jetted back to the reserves.
Yeah, I mean, it gets some
wild shit, man.
It gets some of them, like parkour where they're climbing buildings high up into the sky.
Yeah.
Up they go because they think, hey, this is a good idea. Other people are doing it, and it's just like, whoa. You're going,
Well, I think it's also important to understand that, we're talking about narcissism and borderline and Billy, I've heard you bring up histrionics, things like that. They all reside on the same spectrum.
Yeah. Well, cluster, you mean cluster B?
Yeah, cluster B personality disorder. I'm new to that, so
yeah.
A lot of them, it's over when it just comes to borderline personality disorder. From what I gathered throughout my reading, I don't remember the exact number, but it's well over 300 different conditions that can also exist with borderline personality disorder.
Here's a fun one. Here's a fun one for you, Angler. How do I word this? Every borderline is their own classification of borderline. So no two borderlines will be the same.
Right.
Just like how there's no two genders the same now, we're into like the hundreds of thousands of different genders. Yeah. Your gender is whatever the fuck you wake up inside.
By the way, I mean, I don't want to make people think that parkour, the high skyscraper building climbers are borderline. If anything, I think they're actually psychopaths because they have a lack of fear.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
they're doing self-harm. Okay, that's
Risky behavior,
self-risk at least.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and no care for law either, because obviously they're trespassing and things like that.
Yeah.
But with all that being said, it's important to simply recognize the behavior, and when you see it, get the fuck away from it.
Ultimately, that's the if anyone's going to learn anything from today's stream, basically, like, look, as nice as it is to talk about these psychologies and is interesting and things like that, it gets to a certain point where it's like enough about other people, as in, like, enough of the externalization, looking outwards. At some point, you're going to have to start looking inwards now. Like, what do you do about all of this?
That's the most important part. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's where the real work, when it comes, especially like if you've been in an abusive relationship and an entanglement like that, that's where the bulk of the so-called healing. This is where the self-work, MGTOW, really resides. It's not about the outside world, because you can spend all day looking at it, and it's like, at the end and once you're done, what has that done for you? Because at some point you've got to return back into your own body and now do something with that information. So at what point is it going to become your self accountability and your responsibility to your own self-care that you start to acknowledge and address? And this is where I'd be like, with the red pill, black pill, that's the transition where you start to become more black pilled, when you start asking yourself, so what's the meaning of life? What does it mean to be me? What does it mean to be happy? What does love mean? And things like that. These are profound, deep questions, and it's not easy. They take time. And this is another difference between the black and the red pill, where if or a difference between infantile and maturity, where children can't answer properly about a life, a timeline. They might try to imagine themselves 5 years into the future, but they can't really extrapolate time in that sense. So they're more impulsive. They're living in the present, and their ideas are very quick. They come very quick to them. Whereas someone who has matured, who has experience, who has done introspection, who has been internalized, has to put in the harder work, and as such has a deeper understanding of philosophy in a general sense. And tying this into what we're saying with these sort of borderline women who are reckless, and why is it so appealing? Why is it now fashionable for people to become narcissistic or borderline? Because it's a quick fix solution.
Well,
they want it easy, cutting corners.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to tie that in, Billy, with another thing that I put down here, and I know I wanted to talk to you about. We've linked, in our previous discussion, the PUAs to essentially being the next step for men, and I kind of touched on the basis of these PUAs and the Twitch thoughts and stuff like that, all basically leading to a point where they become almost sociopathic. They've kind of, they're graduating to that next step of being sociopaths. Because I mean, one of the main traits of being a sociopath is a lack of empathy. Am I right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And
they have empathy. They have empathy, but it's a lack thereof.
Yeah, okay. It's always what I saw first on the list and was like the primary concern. Obviously, a lack of empathy for anyone. You don't need any other traits. If you have a lack of empathy and you can't understand the position that another person is in, being a human being yourself who has experienced this life, has experienced physical pain or emotional pain or anything like that, that essentially you're already on the list of sociopaths in my books. And if you think about it, you've met a lot of guys who have gone through the family court system and have had their ex-wives and mothers of their children turn on them wholeheartedly and completely. Do you not believe that essentially that these women are sociopaths.
Well,
if you can turn it off that easily.
you're the first way you put it is very astute, because the way it goes, if people aren't regulated or there's no self-control, then what direction are they going in life? If they're not improving, then this is why they're coined as self-destructive behaviors. So over time, they only get worse, and these behaviors get more and more exaggerated, and they pick up new behaviors, and they're not positive. They'll all be self-defeating behaviors. So by the time they're like old and decrepit, I mean, they're absolutely horrible.
On top of that, I don't think that they ever had anything to turn off, Chris. Like they never gained it. You know what I mean?
Me and Billy touched on it in our conversation, and he basically stated that these people have a picture of you that's frozen in time.
Mm-hmm.
When they love you, they love that picture of you. Any deviations afterwards doesn't match up with their picture. Therefore, everything is gone.
Wow. Yeah.
And it kind of ties into that old saying, "You're not the person I married."
Yeah, that's a borderline.
Yeah,
I've never looked at it from that way, but that's a really good fucking way to put it.
Like I told you, man, if we could have recorded that conversation, we wouldn't have to be here today.
So a borderline. You're dealing with a partner. You realize that they're a borderline. Well, I'm sorry to tell you that borderline partner of yours never saw you as a person. They saw you as an image. You're a representation.
Yes.
And typically they would have they seen you as an idolized. You would have been the savior. So the kind of love you get from a borderline would have been phenomenal. Much more than any love bombing a narcissist could do. This would feel like genuine, absolute. The borderline problem is they have emotions, but they feel them way too much. Like they love like no other. Likewise, they hate like no other. And the borderline can't help but act on their emotions. So depending how they're feeling, they're gonna be acting on it. So when they see you as a pristine image. You're a wonderful picture to look at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, it's inevitable over time that picture will start to degrade. It'll get worn out, torn, creases and things like that. And a day will come, they'll look at this picture of you, and you won't be the idolized person anymore. And this will trigger a sensation of betrayal. You lied to them. You said that you were going to be there for them and things like that. So now, from being an angel, an angelic figure, you've now become the devil.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
it took one little thing. Yeah.
I stated before to you that, my ex-wife thought literally the sun shined out of my ass when we first got together.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And the day that our divorce papers were signed, I was nothing. And we have 3 kids together. But I was nothing, not a thing. I was less than garbage. She had more respect and, consideration for a person on a fucking street that she never met than she had for me the next day, if not same day.
That's hard. That's hard to grasp when that shit happened.
It was. And I mean, it's like, I found out later that this was a planned event. So that means she managed to cover it up for so long, knowing where it was going. This is the woman still sharing my bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that at the end of the day, when fucking the deal was done, I was less than garbage. Completely I was a waste of oxygen, literal waste of oxygen in her eyes. And, that kind of, like I said, it kind of made me think, like, is this person going on the borderline of a sociopath?
It could be. This is another quirk. We didn't really cover this part, Chris, but Vacuum covers it pretty well. At times of crisis or need, like, I suspected my partner. At first, I thought, oh, she's a narcissist, but after evaluation, I reckon she was a borderline. But when the crisis came, when the detonation of the relationship, I saw a totally different side, and I believe she had switched into narcissism at that point, because it was very frightening for me to see. And arguably, if you've got a narcissist person and they're entering a time of crisis, they will deploy the psychopath to fight their battle.
Mhm.
So
Well,
these mental conditions or disorders aren't fixed. They're very flexible and fluid. And depending on the circumstance or the stages that they're in, they can switch into different modes of operandi, as it were.
yeah, I mean, once I laid out essentially what she had done and what she had planned, the reason I felt so betrayed and hurt was because throughout this whole process, which was like a 3 or 4 step process, you know, up until about the midway point, she was still playing a role. Like, first she dropped the mask and I was garbage to her. That's fine and dandy, but she still kept on the idea of having at least a decent relationship with the kids still, until that was no longer necessary to keep up that facade, and then she cut me off completely.
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with what the courts were deciding, because she switched to cutting me off from the children when the chips case from social services, where they investigate the parent for neglect and stuff like that, all fell apart, and they were like, we found nothing. Then that same day she told me, you can't talk to the kids no more. That same fucking day, just hung up and blocked me on everything.
And that's the response of a child taking their ball and going home.
Yeah. And
but they're allowed to make adult decisions.
The difference between me and her is I could still feel remorse for it, even though she's betrayed me and our children. I can still feel remorse for it if she's suffering. Now, whether or not I feel enough to fucking stop it is highly doubtful. In fact, I might apologize to her as I choke the life out of her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that would be the extent of my remorse. Because if I had the opportunity, and I stated in our legal documents that if the kids came to visit, she couldn't stay because it would provide a toxic environment. Because I know that if I had the opportunity to off this bitch, I wouldn't care how many people were around us. I'd off them too, just to hide it. I would not be able to stop myself because I know that this is going to be the closest opportunity I have. You know what I mean? And I know that if she's in control, these kids and my life is completely fucked because she has control and she is a monster. Right?
Yep.
But I'd leave, like I say, sorry, while I was choking her to death. So, I think that absolves me. I'm still righteous with Jesus, right?
Well, just don't get caught. You'll be absolved.
Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, as long as you're sorry for what you did, everything's absolved. But I mean, at the same time, when somebody betrays you like that and you've got children on the line, man.
Yeah.
Kids. That doesn't change with marriage or divorce or separation. That doesn't change. Your kids are still your kids.
Yep.
They're still her kids. You made them together. If you can't work out things between you, that's fine. However, that does not mean that you can, well, in our fucked up society, yes, it means you can legally get in the way of one parent and their children.
Yeah.
So when we've got to that point of corruption, there's no benefits for men to follow the rules. There's none. I don't pay child support to her anymore because she separated me from those kids. And there's no benefit for me paying her. I'm not paying a kidnapper to keep my kid. That's not how that works. But I will have her shot. You know what I mean?
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Well,
this is legal kidnapping. Sorry, go ahead.
Seeing this is something we might, as men, need to be a bit wary of or careful of. So my thesis or whatever was that at a certain point, maybe I don't know, like the Industrial Revolution or something like that. So we had men who were characterized as being narcissistic, or narcissism being characterized as mostly men, abusing their wives and things like that. Now, what we see quite often happen is that the victims of these abuses will start to become abusive themselves.
Yes.
In some ways, they become even more abusive than the abuser that abused them.
Yeah, there's a psychological term. It's reactive abuse. Yep.
Yes, yes, and but um, but it's ongoing. It's not like a singular incident of reactive abuse. You know, like they slap the bitch back. No, this would be like a continuation. It's been burned into their personality. So, for example, people who call themselves empaths have a bit of a gripe about that because they like to say that they're victims of narcissism, but the hypocrisy is that they're very narcissistic themselves with the added righteous indignation and holier than thou attitude. So I would argue in some ways that makes them much more revolting to deal with. At least a narcissist, after a while, is kind of honest with you. You know,
Yeah.
once you feel
Well,
the bull, you know what you're dealing with. There you are. You got a narcissist. But an empath will proclaim that they're all they're butter that melts into your mouth, kind of thing.
yeah, we're so connected on this level that you can't understand because only I can understand that.
Yeah,
Right.
but
Yeah.
so the point I'm making is that there's a tit for tat going on. Um, so
Yeah.
if men abuse women, okay, fine. You know, it's not good. It's not nice. The problem is that these women have decided, well, in their defense, if you can't beat them, join them. So they start adopting masculine traits of narcissism. They take what they think will work. You know, they call it the good parts of masculinity, basically how to be a bastard and an abuser, and ignore the rest. So, so
Yeah.
they become the new toxic masculine man,
Hmm.
and there would have been a bit of backwards and forwards going on, but I'm beginning to see um, a shift coming along where if we're not careful as men, being victimized at the hands of these now abusive women, we'll try and outdo them with the punishment. Um, you know, is it something they deserve? You know, is it tit for tat? Whatever. But this is one of the traps of the narcissist because the narcissist, in their attempts, wants to corrupt their partner. They want to turn their partner into a narcissist as well, and in doing so, it spits in the face of God. It's kind of like, look, God, high and mighty, you think you're wonderful and powerful? Look what I'm going to do to your beautiful creation. I'm going to corrupt him. I'm going to make him me, and I'm going to make him worse than me. So
Well,
when the victim becomes an abuser, the original abuser laughs. They think they've won. Look what I've done to you. I've made you worse than me.
now that we're on that topic, Billy, have you ever heard of this woman, Erin Pesley or Pesley, I believe? How do you
Pissy.
pronounce Pesley?
Pissy.
But the photo of her looks familiar.
She is the founder of the women's battered shelters in the UK. And I mean like
God.
the fucking founder of the founders.
I bet that was
Excuse me.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
I
Wonderful
think I
woman.
have. I think I have come across her.
Yes, wonderful woman. She started these organizations, right, to have a battered women's shelter for women and children. Uh, she got involved with essentially government backed um, agencies, right? And this is where the actual feminist movement came into play, was when the government got involved to help them finance these places.
Great.
She has admitted and stated that these so-called abused women started showing up and with their children and being extremely abusive to these children.
Yeah,
And she started to notice that there was a trend of men as well that had nowhere to go and were part of an abusive relationship, right? So
Yeah.
she wanted to open up the shelters to men as well. Well, by this time, the feminist movement had essentially, gotten into getting a piece of this pie, and they pushed her right the fuck out.
Yeah.
And that's now why these women's shelters that are all over the US and Canada and UK and stuff, they are some of the most corrupt places on the fucking planet.
There was a gentleman, and I'm pretty sure he was from Canada. He tried to start a men's shelter.
Yes.
And he got harassed so badly by the femmes, he ended up
committing suicide. Yeah. And
he
could not get the funding after like 15 years of working at this.
Yeah.
Now you have a group in the States that's like all over, and I think it's Nova or something is the main company linked to this. There was an investigator, a reporter who was writing up a piece looking into the corruption that goes on in these women's shelters. So interviewing, staff and former staff members and looking into the people that are involved with these. And the dirt that he dug up, I mean, this basically implied that not only was the mayor of the city, the main city he was in, involved, but the sheriff was involved, the board of family, I think it's Family Directional Center, basically the people who make up the laws for family court.
Okay.
They were all involved, and all of them were linked because they were like former family attorneys and stuff. So they were all essentially getting paid by the same fucking people.
God.
And this shelter would take in millions of dollars in donations, and these women that were staying there were getting next to nothing. If they took physical donations of like, feminine care products and stuff like that, they would maybe give the girls, say, if they got donated a year's supply for all the women there, they would give them like a box of tampons or something like that, and then they would sell off the rest, right? And these women are literally prostituting out of these fucking shelters, doing drugs outside of the shelters, locking kids in the fucking rooms and leaving them for hours on end. And the staff there are not allowed to do a damn thing.
Well, if the fucking founders of this organization, if they started out in the family court, they know how the money works, they know where it goes, and they know how to funnel it.
Exactly. They're all benefiting from putting these children in horrible situations where a lot of them fucking die. And a lot of these women are not, even if they need care, and they're not just there to say, well, he was abusive, so I need to stay here until the family court fucking agree with me, right? Which a lot of them do. A lot of them use those shelters as a fucking scam. Essentially, yeah, they're not investigated at all. The guy who was doing the report was facing 25 years in jail because the fucking sheriff that he implied fucking came and arrested him. And he got the people that were on the legal counsel to back him up because they were all implied together.
God, man.
Yeah. So the corruption knows no end. And I mean, I can't remember if I think the Nova thing or the Nova Foundation is the primary company holder essentially, but the women's shelters are listed as something else, right? It's like a shell company. Not dodgy at all, but essentially, yeah, they just funnel fucking money from Title IV in the US and from the government funding, and they put these children in worse conditions than any father out there ever could, and they still look at the dad and say they're the bad guy. So obviously somebody's getting paid, right? They're getting fucking paid. He tried to expose it, and fucking Lord and behold, now he's facing 25 years in jail. I don't know if they, I don't know if they actually got him or if he's still free, because everything after he made that documentary disappeared. I haven't heard from him since. So
I mean, if I tie in a bit of child psych, well, not really child psychology, more like parental therapy. this is why when you have children, you help them to learn, like 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 a baby. You spoon feed a baby. But what's the problem if you carry on spoon feeding a baby and now they grow up to be an adolescent?
Hmm.
You have to carry on spoon feeding them because they've never learned how to do it for themselves.
Yeah.
So as part of their strategy or manipulation games is to keep you locked into that kind of caregiving aspect. So, I mean, they're swindlers in that sense. Like they've managed to various techniques make people feel guilty, play the victim card, play a violin, sympathy. I was going to say sympathy, um, and things like that. And so, as a result, unfortunately, society enables this sort of behavior, and they are dependent on it. So um, they will do whatever it takes. I mean, they'll wreck themselves so that you feel so sorry for them that you will try and sort them out. You
Hmm.
hate seeing them become drug addicts or something like this, or becoming prostitutes. So they play on your heartstrings
Yeah.
um, to hand over cash and money, and they do work together as a network, because and this is in some way in the long run it will work against them, um, because for the mentally disordered person, they have enough awareness to realize that, hey, if I team up with some other mentally ill people, it's like safety in numbers. Then together, I'll be able to survive then because I've got a community around me.
Yeah.
So it's in their interest to make this is partly another reason why they try to corrupt healthy people, because if they can recruit people into their disorder, they can bolster their numbers, and to them, this seems like a survival. Like our gang is now getting bigger. We're now a community. We must be powerful. We must be surviving. And the drawback of this is as they get bigger and bigger, more and more crowd psychology starts to develop, where they lose their individualism because they are one of many. We are Borg. Um,
Hmm. Yeah,
so
they're a coalition now.
So these kind of sporadic flare-ups happen where certain members of this group want to try and reassert their um, individual. They want to get recognized because they feel like they're being washed out amongst the crowd. So it's like, hey, don't forget about me. Remember me. So they do something dramatic and
Hmm.
get attention. So that's another reason why they compete with one another to get more and more clout, is although they want the safety of the herd, they also want to have the recognition as like the apex alpha amongst that herd. So there's a sort of loyalty, but there's also severe backstabbing. They'll only be loyal so far as it serves them in a selfish way. That's the funny thing, is this group, this community of people, each member thinks they are the center of the community, that the
Hmm.
community is there to service them. So each member is a selfish individual without individualism.
Well, have you guys ever heard of the channel Disaffected?
I've
No.
not.
You guys should check it out. And if somebody could pull up a link, that'd be great. One of the wrenches could grab that. Disaffected. It's he's a 30s plus gay man, right? Who points out the cluster B fucking personality disorders that's running rampant through our world. And that's actually where I'd first heard of the cluster B personality thing. Um, but
Okay.
he in a stream he did a few weeks ago, he basically pointed out how how the feminist and the gay community used to be kind of linked together, right?
Sure.
They were all the pro female fucking activists. Well, the feminists have run out of so many people to fucking go after that they've now started attacking their supporters, right?
Yep.
So they're going after the gay community, they're going after the LGBTQ community, right? All at once, because they literally ran out of people to go through for
Yep.
that clout chasing. That the victimhood mentality is running out of steam, and they are desperately looking for new targets, right?
Yep.
They've repeated toxic masculinity and patriarchy so many fucking times that it's starting to run out of steam, just like the whole racism thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've been called racist so many times that I will now openly admit that I am learning how to be a racist, but I'm not good at it. Sorry, I'm trying, but I'm not good at it. I don't know. But I'm trying. So as long as I'm trying, I get forgiven again. But yeah, they are literally desperate for the victimhood. And every day that we expose something, it's the reason why, these groups have ties to big tech and government and stuff like that. It's because every time we expose something and one person drops off the plantation and takes a red pill, they lose control. And now they're desperate to get more control. But we're always going to have indoctrinated, young men that have coming out of college that are now fucking turbo feminist, right?
Mm-hmm.
So until we can reach those guys before they get into college, until you can get, between your kids and the colleges that are indoctrinating them right now, we're going to continue seeing young people joining these fucking bandwagons, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like any useful idiot, they will be disposed of when the time comes, just like the gays and the LGBTQs now are no longer their friends, right? They're disposing of them.
I think alongside with that is a lot of these people, these young people that you were just talking about, Chris, they have no identity because they've never been taught how to achieve that.
Yeah.
And they're just clinging to whatever they can cling to. And they're made to be, pop culture. They're made to look like they're popular for doing this shit. And, I think a few minutes ago too, you talked about how narcissism has actually become like a popular thing, and that's why it's being perpetuated. And
disorders now are like trophies.
Well, it's the shortcut in life. So when you've got someone who is young, especially, and they haven't formulated a sense of identity, and now they're getting older, their anxiety, who am I? They're worrying as they're getting older. And then along comes this feminism or narcissism concept, maybe not packaged in such a way, but the ideology sort of creeps in, like, hey, you're entitled and you're a victim. It's like they're very easily swept away off their feet. It's kind of like love bombing. So they are love bombed into these groups, these communities. But I think the tide is beginning to slowly turn because of how much exposure and awareness is growing about these disorders and isms and things like that. They don't, like in the old days, a covert narcissist was quite successful because they were able to sneak around easier and people would give them the benefit of the doubt. But now that there's so many of them and they're competing with one another, they lack the subtleties of self-control and fly. They can't really fly under the radar as well as they used to. So hopefully now a young person, they might not have the terminology to know exactly what they're dealing with, but they'll stumble across one of these people and they'll have that vibe. They'll be like, this isn't right. I'm being groomed. This is like pedophilia or something like that. Like taking sweets from a stranger.
Yeah, well, we're seeing that coming up too. So I mean, we'll get into that one in a little bit. Let's not forget the pedophilia type point.
Excuse
me. But that's one of the styles of their predatory endeavor, is like a pedophile, is to groom people, to love bomb them, to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, to think of Red Riding Hood kind of sort of scenario. I mean, this is the funny thing when people talk about empathy. Usually we think empathy, oh, it's a wonderful thing, it's a good thing. But the wolf in Red Riding Hood used empathy as a weapon.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. Yes.
Yeah, he dressed up like the old grandmother for a reason, because
Right. He knew how Red Riding Hood would feel. So
Yeah.
he tapped into he knew her patterns and things like that. So he tapped into he had to think outside of himself, which you'd think for a narcissist would be kind of hard to do, but this is what narcissists do. They look at you and identify where are your vulnerabilities? How can I lure you? What is it that what is your idea of happiness? This person feels lonely. Okay, so I will offer them my company.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So they're very targeting and they're very predatory and opportunists in that sense. But I think nowadays it's now becoming more because they overplay it. Because of that, because now they're in a depletion. They're becoming more desperate because they're losing more and more followers. Their supply is going down. I mean, imagine the drug addict again. So this is a drug addict who is finding it harder to get a dealer, and whenever they do find a dealer, the drugs they get doesn't fulfill their drug requirements, so they can't quite get as buzzing and high as they used to. So what kind of behavior does the addict start to show? They show more and more desperation. You know, it's like I'll suck your dick for a cheeseburger. Who knows what movie that's from?
I remember seeing it in Trailer Park Boys, but I think Randy was trying to prostitute himself for a couple cheeseburgers.
God damn, I love some Trailer Park Boys, man. That was some good shit. Yeah.
So for the new supply, the young man supply source, fresh meat, he's now like, what on earth have I just witnessed? Like, what's going on?
Well,
So
Billy, that links really well with how Twitch. Anybody that's familiar with the Twitch gaming stream, or what it initially started out as, they have literally molded their platform to focus around Twitch thoughts, right? These were girls that were fairly attractive, that, you know, faked being gamers in some cases, or were actually gaming and streaming themselves type of thing on there, to the point where they had to make like subcategories just for them to hang out in fucking hot tubs and pools and in their bikinis, you know what I mean?
So there's an expression in the narcissistic community where this mask that they wear, right? It's heavy. You know, it takes effort to put on a facade and to play a role, play a false identity. So the mask slips, but sometimes it becomes, and because it's a mask that requires maintenance, you know, it needs patching up, it needs a bit of attention, like decorating or whatever, like sort out the makeup of it and things like that. Not only does it get heavy, but it becomes more and more uncomfortable. And so there comes a time when the narcissist thinks, not all of them, but I mean, a lot of them think, fuck it, fuck the mask. I've let my real identity, well, they don't really have an identity truly, but I've revealed myself on multiple occasions in the past. Who am I fooling? There's no point anymore. And they just sod the mask. And the real horrible nature of this narcissist is just on the full display, and they carry on the rest of their life like that. They're just like, fuck it. You know, so they become more and more blatant. And we see this not just in people, but we see it in corporation levels where they're just blatant now. They can't be bothered to hide. They don't even have the awareness to realize that they are. I mean, they think they're probably being clever. Like, aha, this is clever. If we angle this for Twitch thoughts, and you know, they won't expect what we're doing. But it's blatant.
Even what they molded their platform to isn't enough for some of them. So let's take Amaranth for example, because she's fucking very popular in the meta world now, essentially because of what she just did on G4 TV, right? Again, she was she was on the platform doing the gaming thing. Then she was there for the tub streams, and then it was, the chillin' chats or whatever they called it, where she would basically put on a horse head and lick an ear, in a skin tight suit. Then she got to the point where even that wasn't enough, and she had to do a accidental viewing of inside her vag on Twitch, right? Which got her, of course, a very naughty 3-day suspension, which anyone else would have gotten a lifetime suspension for.
Yeah.
She got a 3-day suspension, came back after 3 days, and had 500,000 more subs, right? Then she opened up her OnlyFans thing. Well, or actually, the OnlyFans thing was kind of like a side-by-side with the whole, I accidentally wasn't streaming on OnlyFans, I was streaming on Twitch. And that's when you got to see Upper Twat.
But this is what you're saying with the chasing the high, they're chasing the happiness, and it's always fleeting, it's always escaping them. So what's going to happen? She's going to have to, people like that, they have to up the ante, become more and more radical, more and more extreme.
Yeah, and the platforms are following them.
Yeah. But
they're making it available.
I mean, it's self-destructing. So the body, the human body keeps count, it keeps score. So it's ruining this person. I mean, it's ruining the reputation of the companies as well. But on the human level, on the person sort of level, the more they, this is the problem, when if people don't learn gratitude and appreciation, they don't learn delayed gratification, because they're so entitled and impulsive, they want everything here and now. They become spoilt, for example. So to compensate this empty void, they believe it's going to be, I'll get so much money, or I'll get fame, or I'll get notoriety, or I'll get likes and subscribers, etc. But the more they try and chase happiness, and the more it escapes them, or the more they try and put themselves on a pedestal, the higher the drop. So they become more and more miserable. It's kind of ironic. It's like, I thought you're someone who enjoys being happy. Why is it you're so miserable? It's because they keep chasing the happiness. The more they chase it, the more miserable they become.
Yeah.
You're welcome, Mr. Hemi. I didn't want to see you die, buddy.
Billy, something you brought up a couple minutes ago that was very interesting to me. I've maybe read an article or two that actually explains empathy on how it can be used, in a negative or a nefarious way. And you're exactly right about that. Most of the time when we hear about empathy, we think it's always a good thing. But that was interesting to hear from another person, because I don't hear about that a whole lot.
No, have you heard other people's empathy for you against them to benefit yourself is a negative.
Yes. I mean, the argument of the empath, for example, they're full of empathy, apparently. I feel how you feel, and I can't help it. I absorb other people's feelings, and it's like, well, you're someone that doesn't know any boundaries. How disrespectful you are for stealing other people's emotions. Yeah. But they don't see it as that. They see it as like, no, my heart is so big that I just feel how they feel. It's like, well, have you stopped asking if they want you to feel how they feel? You just basically invaded and taken their emotions and claimed it as your own. Have you heard of the dark triad?
Yes,
I think briefly, but I can't
narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism.
Right. Yes. Have you heard of the is it called? I think it's called the dark empath. Or is it the dark triad, dark empath? Yeah, I think it's a dark empath. It's a pretty new one.
I've not heard about the dark empath. Please explain.
You were the first one to mention that triad to me the other night. So
let me double check. There is actually a dark empath. I'm pretty sure there is, but it's basically the dark triad plus empathy. So, which is meant to be an even more dangerous cocktail of psychological characteristics.
The dark triad on steroids.
Yeah. Kind of, yeah. So you've got someone who's a narcissist, who Machiavellianism, and they're psychopathy, but they also got the ability to empathize with other people.
They're evolving. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned that to me the other night when we were doing the after party.
The dark empath. Yes.
So was there something you wanted to add into that, or was that it?
Well, I mean, we could quick little branch. So these words sometimes, we just need to be a bit more knowledgeable in our literacy vocabulary. Like if I said to you guys, when I say discipline, what comes to your mind?
Spankings.
Right, spanking. All right, Angler, give us one.
Self-awareness.
Oh, okay. Right. All right, Chris, I'm going to pick on you now. So
All right.
you jumped to spanking.
Yeah,
When it
I
came,
just pictured a person holding a stick.
right, like punishment.
Yeah,
Yes?
like a
Yeah.
spanking.
Now, that's what we normally. That's it's a very common answer people give when they hear the word discipline. They immediately think of punishment. But what if I said discipline quite literally means teaching? So
I would agree with that. Yeah.
when you learn martial arts, for example, you have to be disciplined,
Yeah,
right? No punishment there. Or when you're learning a musical instrument, it requires discipline.
yeah.
No punishment
Discipline,
there.
dedication.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are some of the I don't want to say traps, but sort of linguistic sort of snares we can sometimes fall into if we're not careful, and abusive people will exploit that. So this is why they'll say things like empathy in such a way, because they know on the whole that people will assume it must be a good thing. So they might say like, "Hey, I'm very empathetic."
Right.
You're thinking, "Oh, you must be a good guy," and they're thinking, "No, I'm going to use my empathy against you."
Yeah, we
Now
don't think of it as like the
right.
dark
So,
term.
but if you were to ask them, "Is their statement true?" They'll say, "Well, yes, it is. I am very empathetic, just not how you think."
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's sort of like it ties back into the lies essentially that the fucking, the PUAs and the, um what are they called? Life coaches out here for men are trying to sell you.
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
So,
that's
it becomes part of that con artistry and that sales, and yes, so they'll be able, and this is like part of that love bomb as well.
yeah.
So they're very good in that sense when it comes to saying the words that you want to hear.
Yeah. So essentially they've adapted the whole word triads essentially, or the fucking the what did we call them, buzzwords that you would normally contribute to a positive reinforcement of some kind or a positive outlook, and they're basically saying, well, yeah, essentially I'm here for men's rights, but I'm the one who's going to benefit from it because as a man I'm still here for men's rights. It's just mine. You know what I
Yes,
mean? Or for men's benefits. It's just my benefits.
yes, and
Yeah.
and in the process of doing all this sort of trickery with these play on words and sentiments and ideas and concepts, what they're doing in a way is they're making you create this false promise and this utopia dream.
Hmm.
They get you to paint that picture.
Yeah.
So they're not
They,
really painting it for you. They're
yeah.
getting you to do it. So this is why that utopia dream, the false promise, is so appealing, because it's a result of your own delusion.
Yeah.
It's
It's like,
your own fantasy.
I believe on our discussion, I mentioned them as being almost like those prosperity preachers, the evangelicals that fucking go on to these big channels and these mega churches.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like, send me all your money and Jesus will accept you because this is what's good. I can't fly in a public transportation. I need a private jet because demons, you know, like
and
you're not the people that follow these churches and these completely insane usury fucking on a usury level I haven't seen before. I mean, essentially all PUAs and stuff like that, they're basically
Same
religious.
thing.
Yeah, they're religious fucking televangelists without religion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're using a new thing.
That's why it's also very powerful in what they're semi doing, because they're stimulating your creativity. Because like if it wasn't for them, this person wouldn't be fantasizing in such a way. But the manipulator is encouraging the person to dream, be creative, go wild. What do you think is the idolized future? You know, go for it. And so as time progresses and you talk to one of these followers and you say, so did your life go as planned? You know, it doesn't seem like it. Because they are the creator of this picture, they can they can modify it easily. And so even though their life might not have had gone as planned, you know, like they're not the top of the ladder and with all the girls and businesses and cars and things, they can on the fly pretty much modify this picture and be like, well, you know, oh, I'm still happy, yes, I'm still living a good life because you know, so it shows the delusion is like is able to morph and shapeshift in a way that still aligns with the abuser.
Well,
Billy,
it's like, sorry, go ahead, Angley.
Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Billy, the picture that you're talking about that they're creating, is this the same picture that you were talking about a little while ago, that, you know, once that picture gets creases and folds and it's not pretty to them as it used to be?
He's essentially saying the oh, sorry, go ahead, Billy.
This is the picture the victim is creating.
Yeah. It's like when Richard Cooper and them fucking say, we guarantee results and, you know, you can be a part of the 1%. But in the back room, they tell you this is all on you. Yeah. We've just sold you a picture you created with trigger words.
The first part you said there, we will guarantee you results. They don't tell you what those results are. They leave that for you to decide what are the results.
Yeah, they still get to absolve themselves because they didn't create your fantasy. You created the fantasy by the buzzwords they used.
But at the same time, they're very crafty at making you think that they're going to create that for you for a price.
Well, yeah, but I mean, look at what these televangelists do. I mean, they have people bringing their dying kids to these fucking organizations, giving them thousands of dollars for a fake fucking healing. The kid dies, and then they send them more money.
Guys,
like, Jesus Christ.
This was years ago, and I dated this girl for about 6 or 7 months. She was a few years older than me. She was a nurse practitioner. You know, she did well for herself, very attractive. And she went to one of these mega churches, and I wasn't really into church, but eventually, you know, I went to church with her. And I mean, this church was huge, bigger than anything I've ever experienced. You know, they had this big old rock band up there. And when the rock band was playing, the dish came around. And I was rubbernecking a little bit. And she wrote a check for $700.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And put it in the dish.
Well, I got to ask, guys, what are some trigger words we can use or buzzwords that we can convince all the people on YouTube to give me enough money to become emperor? I mean, I keep telling them I'll fix their problems for them. Maybe that's the wrong way to go because I'm actually promising a solution. But I could definitely deal with the government.
Careful. Yeah.
I got a solution for all of our politicians. It's a long rope and a short drop.
Yeah.
Yep. Any thoughts? Like, how do we get between this shit, man? Like, I know the televangelists, they've been going on for decades, and everybody knows or should know that they're scammers, right? We have seen them flip flop on shit, and the things that they say and do, it's all about them benefiting. So these PUAs and the Jack Murphys and fucking Richard Coopers, they're no different. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? Can we actually
Yeah.
get rid of them? Can we shut
No,
them down before they start, or eventually they going to become the next mega church?
I think maybe in a sense, and maybe this is just me being optimistic, that they need to exist so that things like we do are allowed to be more relevant because that's your fucking opposite example.
Yes, it's unfortunately we can't really directly stop them. It's like if we take the relationship family dynamic as an example, there will be like flying monkeys of the narcissist or people in the harem that support the narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll have they have different reasons for doing so. You know, there might be expecting an inheritance, there might be blackmail, there might be just naive and gullible and just trust the narcissist. They might have children, there might be dependents, trauma bonded, all sorts of different reasons for why they're members of this cult family. And if they are part of this cult family, and you try to pull members out of it or try to save members out of it, typically it doesn't work.
No, it doesn't.
No. I mean, there's a very rare occasion where somebody has, like, let's take the Church of Scientology, because as a church they got the most scrutiny, but yet they're still mega church, right? We've had people escape them and come out on a tell all kind of scenario, but at the same time, I don't think it will stop somebody from joining tomorrow. You know what I mean?
I mean, this is one of the reasons why they say, like, look, we don't go red pilling people. They find the red pill for themselves and come to us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Unfortunately,
the thing.
that's
So with these people in these PUA groups, it's a hard one for us to sort of say, and it sounds mean, but it's like, one, they need, if they were to wake up out of it or fight against it to resist, they're gonna need some more pain.
yeah.
There's gonna need to be some sort of failure, some sort of epiphany, some sort of collapse or disaster, where they're essentially, what it is that the PUA has offered out a lifeline to these individuals. So they see the PUA as their source of survival, and so they're going to hold on like with a death grip. So it's not so much. So this is the thing. So it's not so much the promise of getting results or the promise of picking up women or this and that. It's deeper core wounds that's got them in that situation where they resorted to having to get the help from the PUA. So typically this would be problems with their self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
They don't feel good about themselves. So they're hoping by paying this money, and a good amount of money at that, they are buying their self-esteem.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should mention that, Billy, because I know in one part of our conversation we talked about the connection that people can get to their therapists, and even the therapist can be abused and stuff like that. The evangelicals and the PUA supporters that have been basically called out. The reason people still support these is kind of links to what I watched on a show the other night. Are you familiar with the show Monk?
No.
No. Anyway, it's about a detective who's a little bit out there, right? But a very intelligent guy.
Yeah.
Essentially
Okay.
like the Western world Sherlock kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
but with more phobias than a therapist. So essentially, he couldn't afford the insurance wouldn't pay for his private session, so he ended up going into a group session, right? But the
Right.
group session was covered. In this group, there was a person who had essentially said, "Well, I'm cured," because like the protagonist in the show, his insurance wasn't going to cover any private sessions anymore. So this person who said he was cured started killing off the group session members so that he could have the therapist to himself, even in the groups, right?
Right.
So it kind of goes with that kind of level of obsession when it comes to these people that, no matter what they've been through, no matter what they've been shown, they still support these scammers and con artists. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like that mentality kind of links in.
Yeah. It can do. Yes. So if you're paying $3,000 and you're worried and you're desperately your esteem is attached so strongly to this person that you're now worried, or you've got a fear of abandonment, and you're worried that they're going to have other clients, and so you're not going to get the attention that you need. So you better book some more sessions in.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can have this kind of competitiveness amongst their members,
Yeah.
and they might not even have any interactions amongst themselves, but it's just that fear that, hang on, if the PUA's diary is getting booked up, it's like a fear of missing out. So I better book. Not only should I book some more sessions, but I should book in advance.
Right.
Yeah, and
Well, that's what I was kind of saying. Like, no matter what, so, like even the liminal order guys, right? They have we basically fucking trashed Jack Murphy to the point where he'll never get over it. Even though the fact that somebody who's such a scammer, and this wasn't new information to me, but I still seen him on huge platforms like fucking Timcast and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
There are still people that are in the liminal order right now to this day, still paying that fucking scammer,
well, okay.
and still are part of
Yeah.
his
All right.
army.
Here's a good example. Right? Have you heard of the Shaolin masters or Kung Fu masters or whatever? They'll knock you down with a single finger, or they'll blow and you'll go flying through the wall or something like that.
Yeah.
All right? They've got superhuman powers, allegedly. Well, it turns out one of the ways that they get their students to enroll or to stay on the course or to give money to this so-called master is because the students have paid into it. So they subconsciously play along because they don't want to seem like they're complete idiots. So they pay the master, and they take part in the demonstration, and the master doesn't need to instruct them to fall over. They'll do it automatically because they're so self-deluded that they are believing into the lie.
Yeah.
And also because they're paying money.
Yeah, they don't want to admit to a bad decision.
Right.
Yeah.
So take this to the PUA. So you've got someone who's paid $3,000 to a guy. You're gonna, you could betcha, like, when that session is finished, he's gonna speak positively of it. Typically, I mean, there might be some people who talk back, say like that was a waste of money. But if this is a very self-conscious, weak kind of young man who doesn't want to feel as though he's an idiot that's wasted his money and time and things like that.
Yeah.
Because if he was to, this is the thing, if he was to accept that he wasted his time and money and he was wrong, it depends on the level of narcissism he's got inside him. Like, some people can't accept losses. So if he can't accept a loss, he's going to have to imagine that the session was very successful, and so successful that he's going to go again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, It's that investment and hope that, like they're selling you false promises. I could promise you the fucking sun, moon, and sky. It doesn't fucking matter. You will not have it tomorrow. But if you keep trying, you might. You know, it never falls back to me being the instigator of your delusion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like what these guys are saying. Oh, you can be part of the 1%ers and, guaranteed results if, and there's
Well,
the fucking trap.
and
Billy,
Not on me, but if
you
you
make,
do certain things.
I
like,
think that there's two things going on there. I'll be quick with this. I think what you're describing is the inner critic. The person that does not want to admit the shame to themselves, and then you have the gaslighter.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
gaslighting's
Bad
become
choices.
extremely effective.
Well, so yeah, because I was going to sort of say a point which, yeah, it's kind of like gaslighting as well. Like Chris, you said it in your either like last stream or very recently about how 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 MGTOW is hurting the bottom line. Like,
Yeah.
why was it you, Angela, that said that? When why is it these PUAs are getting so upset with MGTOW? Well, it's because it's
Yeah,
hurting.
because we're hurting their bottom line. We're taking their subscribers away.
Was that you, Angela, that said that? Well, maybe both of you said it.
The truth threatens liars.
Basically, yeah. So anyway, and so if the like so the PUA has spellbounded their target, their prey, this young defenseless young man, and if there is a danger that this spell will be broken, they're going to have to pour it on like tenfold, and gaslight in multiple directions. So they'll have to reinforce the spell binding on the target at the same time, dehumanize or devalue the potential threat that is, in this case, like MGTOW and the Red Pill.
Mm-hmm. I found like with groups like Rollo Tomasi and Richard Cooper and the other guy Anthony from the podcast with Undead Chronic there, the pickup artist.
Yeah, John Newton lifestyle.
Yeah, the one thing they all have in common, and I know part of it is part of the show. It's part of that facade that they build, is they have apprentices. You notice that? Like Rollo Tomasi has apprentices. Fresh and Fit, Donovan Sharp, and a couple of the other guys are all apprentices of Rollo Tomasi. That's why they all mention him almost in every stream. They
First
mention
time I saw them all together was at
you talk about like
Studios.
The Sorcerer's Apprentice.
yes, well, or the fucking Sith. That's the more. I'm a Star Wars fan. At least I used to be. When it was good and not woke garbage. Yeah, I like Star Wars. So the Sith has an apprentice, right? And having another person there is like it almost acts like a validation. You know what I mean? Like seeing that, oh, I'm gonna get you results because look at my apprentice over here. He's gotten results, right?
Yeah.
And eventually they branch off, but they always keep mentioning their master. You know what I mean?
You might have pissed off the boss, but here's the underboss to come and patch back and say, hey man, just
create legitimacy.
Yeah, PUA has become so successful that every PUA has a fucking YouTube channel now, and they can all fucking quote each other, or cite each other type of thing. Like, oh yeah, if you don't believe me, just look at Rollo Tomasi. If you don't believe Rollo Tomasi, just look at Donovan Sharp. If you don't believe Donovan Sharp, just look at fucking Fresh and Fit. Blah 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 blah. And
that's a great point.
It kind of validates their points to these young guys who are new into this, right? It validates that, oh well, obviously this gets results because there's one right now and there's another one, right?
Yeah,
like you can to be a standalone is hard, and that's why Richard has actually brought on more people. They're his apprentices, essentially. They're his verification of success in your eyes, but it's all part of the facade,
right? $3,000 an hour.
Yeah, $3,000 an hour. I only charge 1,500, guys. 1,500 right here. Half price, but twice the value. Because I'm going to tell you to take that other 1,500, and if you want a Hormax, call them up. The average range is between $250 and $350 an hour for your local prostitute. So, I stand with single mothers. See, I'm a feminist too. But yeah, like I said, they have these apprentices for a reason.
Mhm.
When Rollo Tomasi first got his apprentices, and he picked them up and got them into that role that they're here to play, he exposed himself as a bit of a scammer. He dropped his facade a little bit, and people started calling him out. And
Yep.
21 Studios was one of the ones that called him out first, right?
Yep.
And then they started going after Donovan Sharp, but not before Donovan Sharp was essentially a secret apprentice of Rollo Tomasi and was a fucking con artist, verified one, and actually
Yes.
got on their show. That's the sad part and this is why, like I said, if 21 Studios is still valid, because like I really want to keep liking them, but if they're still valid, then they should know by now that Fresh and Fit is another one of fucking Rollo Tomasi's fucking little apprentices.
That's what I'm saying, man.
But
I
if they're
haven't
going on
watched
a
them.
show, if they
Yeah.
go on a show next week, they're done. I'm done with them right there. That's the end. You know what I mean? I'll unsubscribe from 21 Studios and fucking
Yeah.
that's it.
So yeah, a question of integrity can come along at that point, because, I mean, this is where some people might turn a blind eye because, like, they want to profiteer, or they want to capitalize on the sort of networking, but they have to kind of suppress their conscience to some degree. So morals and ethics, this is why like morals can be suspended, they can be modified, so they're not exactly rigid. The morals fundamentally are fairy tales we like to tell ourselves to make ourselves feel better, to justify the things that we do.
Yeah. And I mean, we've bent morals on a day-to-day basis.
So
We all
like
have.
like what we were saying about earlier about how empathy can be a positive as well as a negative. Same with morals. Since someone to have morals isn't really good enough, because an evil person can have morals.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think man, this is becoming very interesting, gentlemen.
Well, like I said, me and Billy went for 2.5 hours, and we were both exhausted after the fucking 2-hour stream ended. He sucked me in like a fucking rabbit down a hole. Bastard.
I think, and this is the first time I've ever thought about it this way. It's just hearing by the two of you talk about it that, yeah, you know what? Morals have to be adaptable. It depends on the situation.
Yeah,
okay, sitting here tonight, I don't want to shoot anybody in the head. But what if I have to tomorrow for a very good moral reason?
Yeah, or even more basic, like you don't typically believe in stealing, right? But if you were starving and there's a loaf of bread at the market, you might steal it.
Yeah, and we would bend our morals to say, hey, man, the guy was starving and he stole a loaf of bread.
Right.
That's not even a crime here in this country. That old-time crime, that was an old-time crime, right? Where a starving person could steal food and be forgiven because of the situation. It's not that they fucking take him to jail, right? It was a immoral crime done for a moral reason, right? Because you don't want to starve.
Just one more scoop of ice cream won't hurt.
Yeah, well, and to this day, as far as I'm aware, if that was your case, you're most likely not going to see a day in jail, right? But there's a difference between stealing, and I kind of go to that the Simpsons episode where it's like, well, maybe he wants to steal a whole truckload of bread. You know what I mean? Maybe he doesn't like bread. Maybe he likes, something else. Is that a problem? You know what I mean? Like how far are you willing to bend morals? And that's where I
Yeah.
think your ethics level has to be there to check each other. You know what I mean? Like your morals check your ethics check your fucking morals.
Yeah.
And
Likewise, that's also a bit like the external versus the internal. So both are both are beliefs that we find acceptable. So the morals is a kind of like internal belief that we find acceptable, and the ethics is an external, what society deems as socially acceptable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're seeing in where is it? Is it California? Where now if you steal under $1,000, you don't go to jail, and they've taken that moral thing because they didn't want so many people to have criminal records, right, for stealing something that they needed but couldn't afford. And
That's been
now,
going on for a while. Yeah.
yeah, now they're just driving in there on their fucking pedal bikes, loading up garbage bags, and nobody can stop them and drive them right out the fucking door because it was $999.
And it's all over social media. These people are getting fucking videoed
Yeah,
doing this shit.
yeah. Guards
Nothing.
are standing right there, and the best he did was try to reach out and grab him and stop him, and that was it. But he knew he had no intention of actually stopping him.
Right.
And the businesses are closing down.
So be it. Yep.
How far are you willing to bend the loaf of bread fucking moral? Well, let's check it ethically. Do you need 26 boxes of hair dye as a man? No. Okay, so that's where we draw the line. Right? Yeah, the one guy that went in on the bike and filled up his fucking garbage bag full of fucking hair dyes and shit.
Yep.
Like, you're not stealing it to survive. You're stealing it because it's quick, easy money. You're gonna sell that hair dye to fucking Shaniqua down the street.
Exactly.
And you're gonna go buy some fucking meth with it. You know what I mean? The way I see it, if I need something for myself, my kids to survive, yeah, morals are gonna go out the window pretty fucking quick. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But to say, oh, I stole my neighbor's lawnmower just because my grass was long, rather than asking him to borrow it,
Yeah.
That's a moral you don't throw out the window. If that were the case, then I'd take everything around me.
Right.
I wouldn't ask. I'd just take it. But yeah, so we got off the track there.
That's all right.
But it's the example, right? And right now, like I stated to you before, Billy, I think that whole fucking aspect of it's a combination of them using these buzzwords, right, that sound good, but they're coming with bad intents. They're essentially bending all morals because they don't really have any. It's the loaf of bread turning into a truckload of money now. That's moral. And they're promoting it all over the place, and no one is stopping this. Like, nobody.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a horrible affair, like, to be looking at it. But this is how how the narcissism has evolved over time. This con artistry, this false promising and duping people, manipulating, has also evolved with the times. I mean, what's also even further sad is I've described it before as like what the narcissist does, because the narcissist doesn't have a heart of their own, really.
Mm-hmm.
So what they do is they reach into your chest and pull out your heart, and they present it as if it was theirs. So you think, oh, this person has given me their heart. It's like, no, they're basically, they've stolen your heart, and you think you owe them a gratitude and thanks, but there you are. So whatever promises that these PUAs are offering, like let's say, you will get results, you will get the self-esteem, etc., like that. These aren't things that are beyond the target's capabilities. They can do it for themselves if only they know how or guide in a way.
Yeah.
So the PUAs aren't really offering anything new or unique. They're only selling these people things that they've already got. They just these people just for whatever reason haven't accessed them or even realized they possess them. So
Well, that kind of goes to like just having someone listen sometimes, to listen to another person's complaints about what's going on in their lives or their opinions of how things are going. Sometimes that's all the gratification they need because they haven't even had that in their lives, right?
exactly.
I
I'll
mean,
tell you
that's
right.
why
That's
I'd like
a great point. I think that effective listening
yeah.
Yes.
is becoming a lost art form
Well, and
to
I
really
mean,
just listen to somebody. Yeah.
we've also touched bases on the therapist basically doing the same thing, right? Where they've
Mhm.
just sat there and you have just spilt the beans and you're willing to come back and pay them again to do it. Now, like I said, the therapist thing kind of falls on a medical line that I don't fully obviously disagree with, where, it, I wanted this open platform for guys because this gave me a voice. Other platforms have given me a voice. They've allowed me to, you know, essentially go through my own kind of therapy here with you guys. And
Amen.
that's what I would like to have for other guys. I would
Yep.
like to have this as an open platform. I will deal with the interlopers that just want to come in and flash nudes or porn as they come. Don't worry, you didn't hurt my feelings. You know what I mean? But
Yep.
at the same time, I would rather have this be an open platform and allow people to come on and share their grievances or discuss, what's going on in their lives that has gotten them to the place where I used to be.
I
Right?
think I think I understand what you're talking about. I'm kind of the same way. It's just I've listened to the manosphere. I could say MGTOW or red pill, but the manosphere as a whole, it's kind of an umbrella. And I've taken so much from the community, and I just want to give something back. Our days are numbered, and I don't know. I got like what 33 subs or something like that. I don't care if I ever hit 100. I just want to be here, and I want to contribute. I don't just want to be a consumer of the community.
Hmm. Well, I mean, I was a consumer for 5 years,
Yeah, me
you
too.
know, and
Yep,
then
yep.
I finally stepped up to an open discussion, and one thing led to another, and that became my therapy. Like now, it's one of the high points of my week is to come on with you guys and have an open discussion,
It's great. It
and
really
it's
is.
only $1,500 from each of you.
Well,
That's a good deal.
I'll look for the bill. I'm going to move before that comes here, but yeah, I'll look for the bill.
Oh, we just do e-transfers here, bro.
Okay. Well,
Um,
fine.
hold on. I'm gonna open up something. I've got to work. I'm actually working towards a qualification, and I've got this workbook. One of the questions was like, "What is the importance of acknowledging a child's feelings?"
Mhm.
I'm just bringing it up here because I'll share what I wrote in it.
If you don't mind sharing, what are you working towards with a workbook like that?
It's not exactly a high quality. It's not like a PhD or anything like that. It's just like a certificate, a certificate of attendance of a parental course.
Okay.
But I've also put my name forward as a leader for future group get-togethers. So normally it's for women, for mothers. So the council have done a pioneering similar program, but it's for fathers this time. So it's the first of its kind, type or whatever,
Mhm.
in my city. So we're a bit like guinea pigs in it. Um,
So what you're saying is you're a toxic male misogynist and a woman hater.
yeah, in a group of them,
Mm.
and I've got on Tuesday will be my last session with them, and then afterwards, hopefully, I'll be going forward and guiding other toxic male hating feminist type people.
Yeah.
Because as they expand, they're going to need more people to facilitate the program.
Well, and you know, where's the problem? Like, where is the goddamn problem that these fucking feminazis have? They say they want men to improve, right? But yet when men try to get together to improve, even like as a father to their children, I mean, we're not born with these tools. We have to develop patience and understandings and you know how to control things and shit like that. And when we do get together, we're fucking hammered down. Like absolutely fucking
guys,
targeted.
I was
I think
watching.
I think maybe that's a problem that we got to let go of. That because we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't.
Well,
We're either
personally,
involved in the kid's life and the mother makes that difficult,
Angler,
or
here's the thing.
yes, sir.
To get past this bullshit and to say we're damned if we do, if we're damned if we don't, I'd rather say let's just give them the middle finger and stop being apologetic. How about that?
I've kind of done that with my son's mom, but anyway, Billy, what was the question that you were going to recite from your workbook?
Well, I'll get onto that in just a second. We need to persevere. I mean, I saw a video from a lady doctor, who was doing a dissection on a psychological dissection on Karens. It was about 16 minutes long, and in this video, it was crap. She didn't really cover anything. Now, we all have streams, and we go on for hours, and the amount of content and context and dissection and analysis and insight and explorations and discoveries, etc. It's enormous. So a pat on the back of all the guys here and elsewhere who are contributing and doing and spending the time and hours to do this. It is mind-blowing in one sense, because if only the rest of the world would have even a slither of care to be as invested as we all are here, then things would maybe change. So it's a stark contrast of what the masses deem as analysis and what we do. You know, so like a round of applause to all the gentlemen, like, for that. You know, you're all titans in my eyes, and doing the hard work, and that's what really ultimately kind of matters. I mean, yeah, they might not do it, and they might be trying to leech off other people and things like that, but as long as we're, you know, for our own self-gain and benefit and improvement and our own healing and recovery and things like that, it's not, I don't think it's a waste of effort or a waste of time or anything like that. It's highly respectable and admirable, admiration to all you guys. So there is a very strong, I feel like, parental, like fatherly kind of discourse we all share, and in that way it's like a nurturing, I mean, it's like therapy, as you guys are saying, and we discuss it to such an extent because it does matter and we do care, unlike the rest of these bastards, you know. So with that, anyway, so the question was, describe what happens when you acknowledge and accept someone else's feelings. And like you're saying, like, so I wrote, to be heard, seen, can give a sense of existing and that they matter. It can bring a sense of relief knowing that they are not alone, and how they feel is validated. The time given shows them that someone cares. They are willing to understand and appreciate them for sharing how they feel. This in turn builds trust and confidence with being open. Allowing them to express their thoughts and articulate them can help them to process, and reduce their anxiety, so they feel a weight lifted. By deciding to come to you to share their feelings, it is an honor, and out of respect, you can show them with reciprocation value in what they say and their decision making. I know that's a mouthful there. Basically, it's like for you to value, for you to come to talk to me shows that you value my ears to listen to
Mhm.
you. And so I return that value by acknowledging your decision making. So you're basically you're someone who can make good. You're making a good decision. So later on, this can protect them making poorer decisions or trying to confide in people who do not care so much for them. It's also a lesson in empathy, compassion, and building connection. You can show that you are not selfish and dismissive of other people's needs. This will help them to become better listeners as well as they grow. They can better understand themselves, which will help them form a sense of identity and esteem and become more in touch with it. And that's basically what I wrote for that answer.
I,
And
that's
that's
actually
true. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead anyway.
So the importance of listening is not just, oh, you're a good listener. It paves the way for a whole bunch of other things,
Yeah.
and gives gives the person who's talking to you a chance to, um, well, articulate, formulate their thoughts better, consolidate them, to voice them out, to get a weight lifted off their chest, reduce their anxieties and things like that. And
well, the message that you put forth to young boys. I mean, I just sat here and listened to that intently. I mean, I couldn't come up with that.
Mm. Well, and I mean, I look at the value of people willing to listen as the people that were there making these YouTube videos and having interactions with their chats when I was going through my darkest days. Those guys kept me going. It validated the fact that I wasn't alone in this situation and the world wasn't going to crush me.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you feel alone in your first stages of divorce or parental alienation, you feel very fucking alone, and that world is literally coming in on top of you.
Yep.
yeah,
If
and if
I didn't have this, I would probably be on the list of people who fucking ended their lives in
well, this is the thing.
2000 fucking
I mean,
18.
this is tying into very early in our conversation about the importance of um, of when they come against obstacles and they start shutting down, when life becomes difficult, options are getting cut off and the world is caving in on them. This is the danger of going into survival mode.
Hmm.
Once you're survival, you become vulnerable, you become gullible, you become naive, you become impressionable, you become predatory, you become selfish, you lose your empathy, a whole bunch of problems. So when men are in that situation where, at first they feel like they're on their own and they're being strangulated, or they're being cocooned or something like that, this is protecting them from entering survival mode. Survival mode is a dangerous place to be in.
Yeah, it is a very dangerous place to be in.
Yep.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, part of that suicide, and I don't want to go into too much on suicide because it's quite a big and delicate subject.
yeah,
Uh, but one aspect why some people self delete is because of the sense of utter loss of control. Like life is out of their hands. So the act of self deleting is a form of reasserting control. It's like, I'm going to take my life back into my own hands by ending it.
I think you have to be in a pretty
It's
angry
a dark,
state at that
it's
point, though.
yeah, and a very dark, confused, and emotional. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's a very delicate and touchy subject, obviously.
it is. But I mean, it's something we really like. I'm personally, that is my goal. Is if I can be there for somebody else, or we could be there on this channel to help somebody who was in the exact same position that I was, because I know what looking into that dark fucking abyss looks
Well,
like.
I think it deserves its own stream
Yeah.
for another time. Really,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
It's
fair.
it, but you know,
Yeah,
some
but
things
yeah,
I
I
can't
understand what you're
discuss.
saying.
You know,
Yeah,
it's no, I'm not ready. I guess, but yeah, no, it's a terrible place to be, and we're not talking like this is a war zone or anything. It's a war inside you,
Hmm.
and
yeah,
everywhere you look, it's another form of an attack towards you, because you're a father or the man or whatever the case may be, right? And they're all coming down on you like a fucking hammer. And I mean, I got to points where, sadness turned to rage, and to hear
mhm.
somebody talk about these, pro feminist types, that nearly like set me off to the point where it's like, let's let the demons out and start a fucking murder rampage. You know what I mean? Luckily, I didn't, but
Mhm.
the thoughts were there. Like they bottled up, and eventually, thanks to the people that I found online and the guys on YouTube, I managed to deal with that. Like it's not easy, even with those guys helping you, but it's way easier than being alone. You know what I mean?
Yep,
That was
Yeah.
me rambling, but it is what it is.
good ramble.
So, yeah, you're right. We do need to do an entire fucking stream on that, maybe several. Personally, we need to get those numbers of statistics of men fucking self-deleting way down. Way down. But I
Yeah,
think
it's very unbalanced. I mean,
it,
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but uh, I've heard enough, listening to different people and that had the stats, and it was just like, you got to be shitting me. Is it
yeah,
really balanced?
yeah. Well, I mean, they don't list them as separate, like, as to why men have committed suicide, but it's like
Okay.
86% of them or something like that are all related to family court issues. So with those numbers, and these are government in place numbers, with
Yeah.
these numbers, if you are a fucking logical, competent, conscious government official, and you look at these numbers and say, whoa, there are a lot of men offing themselves after going through family court. What the fuck's going on here? You know
It's
what I mean?
unreasonable. Yeah.
Yeah, if a city in your province or state all of a sudden disappeared with a population of, say, like 1 million people, you would
Hmm.
look at it and say, something funny is going on here. You know what I mean? You would think.
Yeah.
Might investigate into why this entire population just disappeared.
Hmm.
But with this family court thing, hush hush, under the table. If you look into it, we'll have you arrested.
Yeah.
Yeah. As emperor, I will fucking fix that.
Well,
Trust me.
we're all counting on you, man.
It's top of the fucking list. Right up there. You know what? Justin Trudeau's lower on the list. But yeah, this
I
family court structure is,
Yeah.
and like I said, if our politicians that are in place right now, because they have to pander to the women's, right? If they fucking say, hey, you're getting a fucking unfair deal here as a father or as a child, and we need to put this to an end, he's done tomorrow. Tomorrow he's over. It'll be on fucking all the news stations.
Hmm.
This toxic misogynist, right? Buzzwords.
Yep.
And his political career will be over right there. One guy tried to get fucking cameras into family courts to make them public like criminal court. He was done. Never heard of him after. I don't think he's a politician anymore.
It's not surprising. Oh,
Yeah.
a politician tried to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. A
Wow.
politician that had been through the family court, right? Seen the fucking corruption,
Mhm.
noticed that they're not public like other courts, and they're not held up to the same laws, was running for governor and was going to change the family laws to the point where he would have uh like a public camera viewing of family court. And he was never heard of again on the news as a politician.
Wow.
No, I'm not saying they killed him, but I'm saying that they basically blocked him the fuck out.
Yep. What does that tell you? You know?
Yeah, what does that tell you? So, and like I said, guys, when it comes to this kind of money, you're not going to fix this with words. We are done with words. Diplomacy is gone.
I agree 100%.
Yeah, but you start fucking laying bodies in the street, and I guarantee you'll have some fucking results one way or another.
Oh,
One
yeah.
way or another. Like Terrence Pop says, there should be a fucking sniper across from every fucking family court.
Yep.
You put fear of God in them, and they will start listening. Now all of a sudden, you know, the $52 billion a year industry doesn't look really that good anymore.
Mhm.
You know, if you're going to get your brain scooped out.
And it really doesn't take much as well. Like once people, like if we were dealing with the narcissist, once the individual has decided enough is enough, they instantly have a bit of self-respect. Like, I'm not going to tolerate any more of this. I mean, they might have a shattered sense of self-esteem and identity still, but there comes a breaking point. You know, you abuse someone to the point where they've got no other option. They're going to have to fight back or die.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very much like that, where men, society, we've tried to be accommodating as much as possible, but they just keep abusing and extracting more and more until there's nothing left.
Yeah. And the most you'll hear, Billy, from one of these people who are willing to acknowledge that things aren't right, they'll tell you to just keep playing their fucking game. It'll
Well,
work
yeah,
out in the end.
this is
How does
exactly
that work?
well, exactly how a narcissist would respond. You know, they tell you they'll devalue your opinions and say, you're crying over spilt milk. You know, pull yourself together and man up, kind of thing.
Or you know, the system will change. You just have to vote it in. Don't get violent. Don't do this. Don't do that. Still keep playing the game. Keep paying the child support. Keep paying the alimony.
Yeah, so the like a business transaction, and a narcissist is not going to accept defeat. You know, so trying, like you said, like trying to talk to them is pointless. Trying to rationalize with them is pointless. And it's not until the victim finally says, you know what, fuck this.
Yeah.
And in the narcissist community, they call it no contact. Over here, we call it MGTOW. You know,
Yeah.
but it's we are now drawn the line. There is now a barrier, a blockade, and this is alarm time for the narcissist, because it's like, shit, this person has a spine. I'm not going to be able to extract resources from him anymore.
Yeah.
So they'll quickly either find other people to exploit, or they might try and threaten and blackmail, try and bully you into compliance. But chances
with
are,
threats.
yeah,
They'll threaten, you know, use the law against you, whatever the case may be.
but I mean, they're cowardly in nature, so they're like empty threats. You know, they're trying to bluff it. And if they try those threats and, you know, you don't fall for these bluffs, they'll quickly be like, oh shit, better not try that approach. We're going to have to try something else.
Well,
and like you were saying earlier in the conversation, where they look for people to scapegoat or bully. So if they can't get from men, maybe they might try and attack the children, maybe get them on the hook or something like that.
Yeah. Well, indoctrinating children's high on the list, right?
Yeah. I mean, in part, like if they haven't got the kids, I mean, this is kind of like why we get Crazy Cat Lady, because they turn to animals as the next source of people they can, well, not people, but creatures they can abuse.
Yeah, a living thing they can control and manipulate and abuse.
Yeah.
And you know what? When it comes back to the, enough's enough, and I've done a video on him before. Jay Block was the fucking smartest one of the group, right up until he put a bullet in his own head. But when he fucking got online and said today is the day, that needs to fucking happen way more often. Way more often. He took these women that were using their children as fucking pawns, right? And tools, and the government as its own fucking pawn and tool to torture this man and his children. And he fucking stood up one day and said, enough's enough. And he fucking killed them both. They got exactly what they deserved. I had no remorse for those women whatsoever. Not a fucking bit.
Is this the black guy?
Yeah.
From a couple
Jay
months
Block.
ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jay Block.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The day that came out, I just clapped. Well done. Because that's all. Like, it's not going to change the minds of a politician or an attorney or a fucking judge. But
No.
eventually we'll get to them. Because I don't blame the women for having these abilities. I blame the court system and the law that's in place and the government for allowing them to have it.
Yes.
Backing it up with an entire army of police. Well, guess what they're backing up right now for those two women? Fuck all. A whole lot of nothing. And you know what? If you start targeting judges and stuff like that, you're gonna see some real change. Real change. One way or another. It'll either get worse or it'll get better, but it's gonna change. I guarantee you, if judges can't go to work without fucking ducking, you're gonna have these people are cowards. They're used to being in a position of power and having like I said, the army of police and security to back them up. That really does not matter when it comes to a bullet flying at fucking subsonic speeds. It really adds up to nothing.
Right. They have no accountability.
Yeah. And like I said, they've done it freely, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it all depends on what you're allowed to get away with. However, if the judge that likes to favor towards women 100% of the time and cut off children from their fathers, all of a sudden has a fucking 7mm fucking running at breakneck speeds towards his brain pan, it ain't gonna matter. It ain't gonna add up to fuck all. And everybody that's in that group with him in that area or her, right, are gonna look at their fucking colleague with their brains blown out and say, I don't want to be next.
Right.
So better get on board with making this a little more fair. You know what I mean? So we don't end up with Jay Black's fucking gunning people down.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, time for words and playing their game. That's not how this works. You don't beat a dictator by fucking playing his game. You don't beat a fucking enslaver by being a slave a little more longer until hopefully he gets sick and tired of you. That's not how it works.
Right.
So well, that's a kind of quality abused men, and it can work both ways, like with men. But people who have been, it's like a Stockholm syndrome, where they're thinking if they tolerate the abuse, maybe it will subside, or maybe it will change, or somehow it might be their fault. However,
they want you to get used to it.
Yeah. Well, conditioning. Yeah.
But they want you to get used to being a slave. They want you to be that subservient fucking tool.
But there's some kind of like caveat that keeps a person in that position where either they're so beaten down that they believe it's something they deserve, or they're guilted, like they deserve this and they owe it to the other person to be their punching bag. or maybe they've got the illusion that they'll be rewarded in some way. Like, while I'm their favorite punch bag, that makes me special. I guess I'm, they internalize it as if this is their form of love. So the more they get abused, the more they feel somehow valued. It's kind of fucked up,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When I was 15 years old, I was adopted as a kid. I'm not going to really go into a lot of stuff, but my parents were both very abusive. And I was 15 years old and I got in trouble at school. And when I got home, my mom already knew, and she was screaming, wailing on me, closed fists, this, that, and the other. And we were standing in the hallway in the house that I lived in as a child or adolescent at this point. And when she stopped hitting me, I just looked at her in the eyes and I said, "Are you done?" And she didn't say anything back. And I put my fist through a closet door that was right there in the hallway. And I said, "Don't ever fucking touch me again."
Yeah. It's amazing what'll
Mom and
happen when
dad,
you stand up
yeah,
to an abuser.
yeah, they never. I mean, the verbal shit continued, but the physical shit, I snuffed that out right there. I didn't even know that I was doing that. It's just at that point, I felt like, God damn it, stop putting your fucking hands on me. Leave me
Yeah.
alone. Yeah.
But if you hadn't done that, if you haven't asserted your willingness to destroy her like a fucking piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
She would have just kept on with what she was doing because that made her feel good.
Well,
Yeah.
she
Beating
would
your ass was a good
have
thing.
not only kept on, but probably would have upped it as well.
Yeah. They generally escalate, right?
Yeah. And
Oh, yeah.
I've
but
made
anger,
this statement. Sorry, go ahead.
that just shows that, beknownst to you, there was a bit of self-respect that you didn't know you had, and that was it. When it flared up, you punched the wall. That was your self-pride and your esteem and the respect that that manifested itself and made itself known. So well done, and obviously, like,
Sure.
that's a positive thing, but it shows that as we're growing up, like, there's a lot of we have a lot inside that. I mean, this is part of maturing and getting to know thyself as well in the journey of life. That we have things about us that we either take for granted or we're unaware of, or we don't think is even there. And it's good that in your case that you were able, it made itself known. But for a lot of other people who are stuck in this abusive relationship, they'll do the opposite. They'll actually, like, as that part of them is trying to fight back, they'll probably try and stop themselves. So they self-injury and they self-abuse because of the way they've been conditioned with the self-hate. And
Yeah. Mhm.
and that makes, like as Chris is saying, like, if they do something like that, then even more abuse will be coming their way.
Yeah. Then it all gets worse from there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I mean, that's the downside is you will have some people that will implode and then you'll have some that'll explode, right? They'll do self-harm or beat themselves into a submission as to what am I doing that's so wrong? And I mean, that's generally the case when it comes to younger children, like say, 10 and under. And at the same time, if they explode, well, there's even more consequences, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it can go kind of different ways. Yeah, I mean, you could explode and then feel guilty about it afterwards,
well, and the law will come for you.
and that is,
They'll involve the law, especially if you're a man, right? A young boy.
Yeah.
yeah,
Some really ugly shit could happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. But in a more positive way, you could explode, and then you get that kind of clarification where it's like, damn, felt good to stand up for myself, kind of
Yeah, it
thing.
does. It does.
Hmm.
It does. And I mean, you know, when you're young, you obviously don't think of these things about making it a bad habit or anything. But at the same time, I mean, I've seen kids getting fucking beaten down by these single mothers, especially even when I was growing up. And, you know, you could see the shame and the fucking the sorrow, on their face after
Yeah.
something would happen. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, this kid isn't, hurting on the outside. He's fucking bleeding on the inside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, like, I mean, the one neighbor that we had, he did stab his mother. She didn't die, but he stabbed her a few times after years of, growing up with her abuse. You know what I mean? Um, Now, I don't know what the father situation was at the time because, like I said, this was before I even knew what, parental alienation even was. But yeah, no dad around. Did she fuck the local guys and a couple from out of town type of thing? But yeah, like the shit she used to do to this kid, you could see it on his face. Like when he'd turn and walk away, kind of neck down or head down in his chest. Like it was fucking horrible for him.
And I
And
imagine he's the one that got in trouble when that all happened.
oh, of course, he's the one that went to jail for stabbing her. Yeah, you bet.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think he was like 17, so he was of legal age here, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, dude.
Mhm.
Um, this is the same shit. It links to that lady who opened the, the battered women's shelter or battered shelter for battered women and children. She saw this firsthand that these women were more aggressive and more abusive than any man out there.
Absolutely.
Like she noticed a trend right away that when she opened it up, a lot of women were coming with either false allegations or they were the abusive ones and the police just removed the husband. She couldn't afford to keep a place or whatever the case may be, or they might have told her to leave and she ended up at this women's shelter, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And the shit that goes on, like even to this day, these women's shelters are literally cesspools for child abuse.
Yep.
Absolutely 100% cesspools. I mean, there are women that are whoring out their young children in these fucking cesspools. And that's better than having a father involved in the kid's life somehow. But they're not ready for that conversation. All right.
Well, maybe it's time to stop talking.
Well, that's where I'm at. I'm like, well, words are not going to get their attention because money is more valuable than words. However, bullets to brain pans generally gets people's attention real quick.
Yeah. Sorry.
Unfortunately,
I
that's the
probably, I
truth.
probably shouldn't be laughing at that, but
Why
yeah.
not? They would laugh at us. They laugh at us fucking blowing our own brains out
Yeah.
or fucking swinging from the rafters. That's just, we still get money, right? That's all they look at. We're still getting a payday.
Yeah.
So until like half a board of these family courts is wiped off the fucking mat, yeah, they're not going to think twice. There's no risk in it for them. They're secure either way. Their job is secure because the only people that can fire them are their fucking partners in it, right?
Right.
That's the only votes that really matter. If they're all in bed together doing the exact same corrupt shit and using children as cash cows, why would they stop?
Hmm.
I wouldn't stop. I mean, fuck, if the laws didn't apply to me in a certain field, I wouldn't stop. Eventually, no matter how ethical you are, you will cross lines, right?
Hmm.
They can't. It's not even like on the one hand, there is a sort of choosing element to it, but on another hand, there is a compulsion. In some ways, they have to do it because they, well, it satisfies this urge within them. So they enjoy destruction, they enjoy the abuse, they enjoy ruining people's lives. Doing the right thing is, it's kind of funny, like they want to call people toxic, but the way they see it, it's like love, harmony, peace, and all this sort of stuff. That's icky. That's icky for intimacy. Icky, you know. So that actually threatens their survival.
Holy shit, we got Mr. James Von Maxwell in the chat, guys. The ginger hamster has arrived. Hello, sir. Sorry to interrupt there. But that's momentous days, man.
I saw Rad in the chat earlier. Is he still here?
Yeah, Rad popped in for a live stream the other night for the first time, so that was pretty monumental. And you know, we've had Reverend 20 Piece on. If I can get Hammer and Chronic and Sandman to come on now, I think I could die happy, guys. That'd be great. But yeah, like you were saying,
but yeah, so
they're not going to stop that usury.
No, they're not going to stop. They're going to be even more exploitive and more abusive. They're going to ramp it up, more extreme, more just unbelievable. I mean, we haven't seen, like, you know, we think we've seen the horrors so far, but I have a uncomfortable feeling we haven't seen nothing yet. When things really collapse, I mean, I don't know, like cannibalism or something like that, don't be surprised. I mean, it's already pretty bad anyway, the kind of shit they're doing, but with no boundaries and no limitations, and they've got a insatiable need, like a vampiric kind of sense for blood and mayhem. There's only, you know, it's only going in a negative direction.
Yeah, and as long as we leave them in control of this, it will never improve for us. And as long as they don't fear us, they will never change. No, for the better.
I wonder too, Billy, you know, you just talked about when shit hits the fan, how much we'll see these single mothers, not so much the daughters, but I think they will abandon the sons, and they will, and I don't want to say push the sons off on the fathers, but give the sons over to the fathers, because I guess I'm speaking from my own point of view and just from some other testimonies that I've heard on how much these women bitch about how hard boys are to raise, you know.
Jesus.
But at the same time, they want to keep them from us while it benefits them, but they also want to bitch about it. So,
well, not only that, but it doesn't matter what gender the kid is. My ex-mother-in-law, it didn't matter what she did to those kids, bad or good. When they turned fucking 17 or 18, she was done with them and her hands are washed clean. She was like, I did my part.
Mm-hmm.
By what? Fucking up your kids' lives? You did your part. Good job. Good job. Well done.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it kind of depends on situations to some extent. Like if these women can turn their sons into like son husbands, then they might keep them around. If they're obedient and house trained or whatever, compliant, then they might keep them around. But as soon as they are either showing signs of independence or they're escaping the web or something like that, you know, like the spider's web, or some other kind of reasoning, I don't know, too costly to look after a son husband or something like that. If he's then he's gone. You know,
that's a very good point. Yeah.
So it depends. I think at first they'll try to, because they need their supply, they need their puppets and the people to parasite off. So be it a son, be it a daughter, be it animals, be it neighbors, friends, other relatives, or whatever. Yeah. But as soon as it becomes a little bit too much hard work, then their survivalistic nature will kick in, and it'll all be just about themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing is that probably will kick in anyway with the way that things are. They become more and more selfish, and naturally they sort of have a habit of pushing people away and burning bridges. So when shit hits the fan and the society sort of kind of collapses, how quick these things will happen, it might be sudden.
It ain't sudden enough for me, buddy. This is well overdue.
Well, I think what we can say as a fair estimate that things will be unstable and topsy-turvy, like for them.
Oh well, they'll get harder and they'll bitch harder to their politicians, and the politicians will cave more just to get their votes and stay in office. They'll just be more oppression for us if things get harder for them. Right? That's why I say, like I stated, I don't want to see guys end their lives, but I understand, if they do, I'm not going to hold it against them. If anything, I feel bad that we've allowed them to get that fucking far without giving them a helping hand. But at least with Jay Black or Block, he did it the right way. He took out the problem before he left. So if you're going to go down and take some of them with you, my hat's off to you, buddy.
Well, I think at the same time, I mean, maybe the awareness of what you just described has been happening for a while, but I don't know how you guys feel. I've only been doing a little bit of content for a short amount of time, but I've been following, the manosphere in MGTOW and all that for quite a while. But I'm almost feeling like a new buzz from it. Like there's something a little more like it's ramping up a little bit. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
The MGTOW philosophy or the red pill philosophy, dude, it's blowing up astronomically.
Yeah.
They're overworked trying to fucking censor us. That's the fucking truth of it. They're overworked trying to cancel everybody out.
Mm-hmm.
And with platforms that don't cancel people out, it's even a bigger threat. Right? So you're going to see more smear campaigns just like what they did with, Big John, when I think it was it CNN or ABC or whatever did that special on the MGTOW community. It was a very dark outlook of the MGTOW community. Right?
Oh,
So,
they pretty much made it full of him, didn't they?
yeah, well, they got him completely fucking stricken from the record, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing more and more feminists decree that they're not feminists. So
Yeah,
they're
chameleons.
going chameleons, yeah, that's it, yeah. Which is kind of like
Roma army.
Obviously they're having to sort of adapt their strategy. Like they're realizing, oh shit, this feminism isn't working out for us anymore. So we're going to have to kind of go cloak and dagger. So as long as us guys can spot the chameleons, we're generally all right. But that's not to say they're not trying to. They're scrambling. They're realizing that their survival chances are depleting. So they're strategizing like, well, how are we going to get out of this situation? Well, I guess the best thing to do will now to sort of pretend to be anti-feminist and get into the men communities, and
well, it worked out pretty well for Roma Army. She took the fucking followers from YouTube and took them to OnlyFans.
Do you know how many fucking times I've seen her be told to go away? And I'm sorry, Billy, give me a second. How many times I've seen her, be told to go away, that she's not wanted within the MGTOW community, but she just continues. So
she's still getting
I'm sorry, Billy.
It's no surprise though, because she's got no other options really. So she's compelled, or she has to try as she might, kind of thing. But that's the same thing like we see in the narcissistic survivor community, and it kind of makes sense. So if you've got all these victims and people who have been abused and they're gathering together, especially if they're in the recovery stages of their healing, this is like a cafeteria of supply for the wolf.
Yeah.
So the narcissist hides. The narcissist gains access, infiltrates the community, poses as one of you guys, kind of thing, poses as a victim also, and and it's all like, hey, it's all brotherhood and sisterhood over there. and browbeating down at the narcissist, but the covert narcissist is amongst a pool of vulnerable people that they, basically feed upon. So same kind of thing that we're seeing here. So we get these anti-feminists sort of joining the men's community. Now so their original supply source is getting smaller and smaller. So they basically migrated to where the supply has gone, and they try to.
I wouldn't be surprised that after seeing Roma Army's success, Amaranth will be over here soon. Just to fucking draw people to her OnlyFans.
What we need to be careful about in the future will be at some point the government turning around and being like, hey, you MGTOW guys and you Red Pill guys, oh, we're really sorry. How about we turn you into a political group and, we'll promote you. And for us, it sounds like it'll be like, wow, this is fantastic news. The world has accepted us. But really what they're trying to do is maneuver themselves into a position where they can control the community.
Yeah, that could be the worst thing that could ever happen to MGTOW.
And this is the danger of it. People are already beginning to talk about it, like the Red Pill going mainstream and how it's not a good idea. That is why, because cowboys will start trying to become influencers.
They'll become PUAs,
right?
Only anti-PUAs. Give me your money, guys. Yeah, no, that's exactly what'll happen, Billy. If they ever tried to use us the way they've used the feminist movement, which is exactly what they've done, they've used it as political tools. Yeah. If there was enough of us walking away from it to affect their voter base,
fucking catastrophic.
Yeah, they will adopt us just as easily as they adopted the feminist movement.
Yeah,
that's the fucking truth of it.
Now, in a family household dynamic, whether you got a golden child and a scapegoat, some other sort of allocated roles, the children can switch roles like now and again. Like maybe sometimes the golden child fucked up, and suddenly now they become the scapegoat, and the scapegoat, the original scapegoat, gets promoted and becomes the new golden child.
Mm-hmm.
So, roles aren't fixed; they just get redistributed.
Yeah, but this one's been going on for a long fucking time. I mean, for a long time, we have been the bad guys. And to be honest with you, the fact that it's taken this long to get to where we are kind of sucks. But it's nice to know that there is some kind of change happening.
Yeah, well, but I mean, we shouldn't be like welcoming a role allocation shift. It's just basically like they're all the children of the narcissist get abused.
Mm-hmm.
So just because the government might suddenly support us doesn't mean they're not abusing us at the same time.
Well, it's not that they support us; they use us to gain support. We're just poster child, just like feminists. We're poster child. BLM poster child. They're just tools. They just don't know they're tools. Or at least for the majority of them, right? The average supporter doesn't realize that BLM was a big fucking smokescreen. That was a tool used to control a fucking vote or a population or a narrative, to push a narrative, right? It's just like what's been going on in Ukraine. Like I said, that documentary, Ukraine on Fire, pointed out just how much our governments are involved with foreign wars and, promoting the slaughter of other groups just for shits and giggles, right? The massacres that have happened over in places like that over the fucking last 50 years, they're just products of their tool. And they don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck about their own population. Why would they give a fuck about, Ukraine itself? They don't give a fuck. If Russia went in and slaughtered everyone and left only the politicians, they'd be fine with that. It doesn't bother them.
Gents, I'll be back in a minute or so.
Alrighty. Yeah, we're coming up. Holy fuck, 3.5 hours. This will
Three
be
and
the
a half
longest
hours.
one so far. Yeah, no, I expected this one to go quite a bit longer. Like I said, me and Billy, we spent 2.5 hours in that stream afterwards. You know, after everything was said and done, just going on, and I was exhausted. I was just like done.
I spent some time with him a couple nights ago, and it was a very it was a good conversation. You know, it's not stuff that you just find every day.
No, no, and that's like with Dennis from formerly Jaguar Media. I've been trying to get him on for a while. I wanted to get him on after Hamster came on, because Hamster was supposed to be my first, but he drunk himself out of the fucking submission that night. So, you know, but
Yeah.
Me and Dennis had the same kind of thing. And I mean, he's a young man, right? Like geez, I think he said he's 23, but he's had a very interesting and very uncommon life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but sharing his story would be fucking ideal, because we went on for hours, dude.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I'll tell you what. That's another thing that I found. You know, within the MGTOW community, and especially how how you just said a little bit ago, how it's just blowing up. How many of these young guys are? I mean, some of these guys are still in high school, and we're finding them in the the comment sections, and they're making sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fucked up world we live in, buddy.
Yep.
And it ain't gonna get any better by sitting back and doing nothing or trying to meet them on their own territory. It's a rigged game. Just
Yeah.
with the way we're viewing relationships and marriage, we need to view our politicians in the exact same light. It's a rigged game. Are you gonna sit down and play it with them and lose, or are you gonna flip the fucking table over?
Yeah. At the same time, I'm really done with politicians. I mean, at one point in time, I considered myself like a Republican, a right wing conservative.
Mm-hmm.
I I don't trust any of it anymore.
No, and you can't. You really can't.
I, I'm a patriot. Okay, I believe in freedom. If there's one thing that I have to label myself with, it's a patriot. I
Yeah.
want to be free, and I want you to leave me the fuck alone. That's it.
Amen. That's why I have spots picked out around here. Big areas I can go live right off the grid and never fucking have to fucking deal with you again.
Yeah.
And if you want to come and try to take it because I haven't purchased it from the government,
Boom.
good fucking luck, brother.
Mm,
Somebody's not going to leave here very happy.
yeah.
And you know what? We're out in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's going to hear you scream.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, who you going to call for backup if I refuse? You know, and that's how I treat my little area out there. It's like, if anyone does come there, they're a threat right off the bat. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's you shoot first and you ask questions later. I haven't had any issues in any of those two spots that I go to, but yeah, I didn't buy it, and I don't recommend you buy it. Why would you waste your fucking money on buying crown land or leasing crown land? It's you from that country, it's yours. Carve out your little piece for a homestead, it's yours. When they fucking come and forcefully remove you, they can have it. And I mean with fucking blood. You got to be willing to they got to be willing to throw their lives down on the line and say, here's what I'm gambling.
Mhm.
And I'm going to take what you've built here, and I'm going to take you as well. Okay, here's the ante to that game. Your life is the ante. And let's play poker, motherfucker. See who wins.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I don't do the whole buy land thing. This is mine. I'll take it. It's mine. You know, I'm not trying to claim millions of acres. I'm carving out myself a nice little homestead. That's mine.
And there was so much land. Um, I can only speak to the U.S. I'm sure it's the same one in Canada. How much land is, for lack of better words,
Unused,
unused? Yes, I'm getting ready to say
96%.
developed, but not developed, just lived on.
Around 96% is unused.
Yeah,
We have vast, 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 vast pieces of land that no human being has probably ever stepped on. If they have, it was so far back we didn't record it.
right.
Just think about it. I mean, most cities, if you were, if you follow the highway, right, the main highway that goes right through Canada,
Mhm.
outside of that highway, whichever direction that's not on the road, you go for 100 kilometers and you may never see another person again. And that's
Yeah.
almost the entire way. But anyway, I'm gonna bring in Hidden MGTOW.
So,
You
Chris,
guys
did
are.
you cover
I was just
the
gonna
list?
listen, but you guys were talking about all that open land that no one's ever stepped on. I'm like, yes, now we're talking.
Hang on a sec. Let's let Billy say his part here.
Hi, Hidden.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, Hidden. How you doing,
Hey.
man?
Not bad,
What
you?
you got to say, Billy?
Did you cover the list?
I think we've covered the list pretty well. We didn't go through the anger issue thing, but we kind of covered most of everything else. I mean, the one big question that we talked about was when it comes to Richard Cooper himself. Was you wanted to ask him like what is self reflection and what is empathy? You know, this guy that's trying to teach people or claim to teach people for $3,000 an hour of how to be this and that. Um, I don't know if you wanted to continue on with that.
Trying to recall what we said about it, but basically, I just wanted to ask him what was his definition of self-reflection or
Yeah,
empathy, and I doubted he would have one.
yeah, yeah. You said you doubt he would have an answer. So
So, we just covered it.
yeah, other than that, it was there. When it comes to the anger issues, that people can get angry from 0 to 100, but especially when it comes to young men, in their prime years, they never start at 0. You know what I mean?
Okay,
They're always sitting at a certain level,
okay,
and I believe that most women are like that too. That's why you have the angry black women, and anything you say to them, they just snap because they were
yeah,
already ready to snap.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So yeah, the idea of this 0 to 100, I can hear an echo, but I'll carry on. Um, which we quite often, like it's almost a little bit like a two-faced way of looking at a situation. Sometimes, like people can find themselves interacting with someone who changes instantly. I mean, sometimes you might say they've been triggered in a way,
Yeah,
but it's. I think we sometimes forget that, or we're not aware that their finger was already on the trigger when you're interacting. Like they are so
Mm.
trigger ready
yeah,
that when it comes to actually pulling that trigger, I mean that's why it's like they're not really starting at 0 going to 100. They're already at like 40 or 50, and so getting to 100 isn't really a big step for them. Pulling the
yeah,
trigger isn't really a big step. So just because you're dealing with someone or even a group of people which might seem like they're stable, or they're okay, or they're calm, might not necessarily be the case. If they're someone who's prone to being triggered, then they're like a powder keg waiting to go off, even on a good day.
yeah,
They just like a lot of anxiety and stress, um, and especially if they're wired in that sort of mentality, I mean, in some ways that they want him to be triggered, because of the anxiety of just having their finger resting on that trigger. So a lot of the time,
Yeah, they
these people are looking to explode on you. Well, that sounds kind of
yeah,
perverted.
they want to
It's
explode,
not that
and
kind
they
of
just
explode.
yeah, they want to explode, but they just need like that reason to fucking pull the
Yeah,
trigger. You know what I
exactly.
mean?
Yeah, yeah.
You find that in a lot of women now. A lot of women, like you can't say like anything to them. You can't look at them. That's why they generally go off the deep ends with these false allegations if they don't like the way you look. You know, Uh, they'll take the simplest thing, and because of course, government backed, it's now a legitimate thing. They all sit at that fucking ready to pull the trigger state of mind. You know what I mean?
That's right.
It-
So they attribute the overall stress levels to you having caused somehow you causing the trigger. It's like, no, you were already angry before you met me.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we've all heard the stories where women have taken guys up on harassment charges because even though the guy that went before them 2 minutes ago, said the exact same thing, um, this person, because they weren't as attractive or whatever the case may be, they get down, nailed for a sexual harassment charge. They were just looking for an excuse to fucking blow up, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I mean, other than that, like all of our topics are pretty much covered here, buddy. I think we've done pretty well. Um, it's nice that we kept people interested in the chat for a while there. And MGTV, what do you got to add to the whole land thing that you were mentioning there?
Oh, I just thought that was really interesting. I thought you were going to get into that.
Well, I mean, I've stated this a bunch of times, guys. Like, most of us don't realize how much free space is actually around us.
Especially now that everything's like receding.
Yeah, everybody's moving to the cities because that's what our government would prefer.
But like I was reading an article the other day about how the poles shift I think it's like, I think they said it was like 10,
20,000 years.
I want to say like a meter every 100 years. And it's within that meter, it's like shooting around.
Hmm.
So there's not a real pole. It keeps shifting because of things like, say, water distribution. You move the water and it changes the shape of the planet a bit, so it ends up tilting the pole a little bit.
The
So
axis.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what's happening is a lot of northern Canada is all it's all thawing out now.
Yeah, well,
And
we're
it's gonna be
having a
fresh new land with like old ass nutrients waiting.
well, there's a like I said, man, we're talking vast, vast, vast territories
Yeah.
up here where
And lakes.
yeah, and you don't even have to go far from the highways considered sometimes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
To find these open spots where you'll never be seen or heard from again. We have people that are missing here, especially here for some reason. We have a bunch of serial killers here or some shit. We have people missing here. They're missing for years and they're like 200 yards away from their house. You know what I mean? Missing for years.
They keep breaking into their parents' house every week to get food and shit.
Yeah, well, I mean, even with like the guy who murdered the chick here a couple years ago. I mean, they've been looking for her body for like 5 fucking years. And she was literally 900 yards away from where they lived. It doesn't take much to go missing, is
No.
all I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you take your ATV or whatever and fucking drive out 50K, off a logging road or something. You'll never be seen again. You may never see another person again. I haven't lived in too many places in this country where you couldn't do that. The prairies are a little bit different because you have so much of it is used up as farmland, right? But even north prairies, like north of Alberta and Saskatchewan, vast, vast, vast territories where you'll never be seen again.
Oh, if you go into the into the Canadian Shield.
Yeah, and you know, I've been
And
up
they
to
can't see there.
I've been
The
up to the
trees are too
start
thick. Yeah.
of the ice belt, right?
Mhm.
And holy fuck, dude, that's a freaky thing. I got to be honest with you. That was one
I can
amazing
imagine.
event. All trees and forest and fucking rocky mountains and stuff. Well, like
And the
hills,
trees are
right?
old, so they're huge. They're like,
And they're thick, like they're
yeah.
packed together like 9 inches apart. They're almost one big organism. And then all of a sudden, you get up to this top of a hill and you can look out and see nothing but an ice sheet that goes on and on and on as far as the eye can see. It was amazing. They got wolves up there, dude, that have paw prints bigger than my fucking hand. It
Yeah.
was terrifying.
Like the ones that are the Beowulfs or whatever.
They're like dire wolf size.
Or dire wolves, that's it.
Yeah. It's like something out of a fucking horror movie. But yeah,
And
here in BC, I mean, I like BC, but I could disappear here overnight. You'd never find me again. And I probably don't even have to go outside of much of an actual driving distance. You know what I mean? Like you could still
yeah.
drive to pretty much where I am, and I'd most likely never be found.
There's lots of spots. There's lots of spots in Ontario like that too, Quebec.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's all over.
As
And
soon as you start moving away from where the people are, but you gotta go a little bit further these days than you used to.
Well, even when I was in Wisconsin, there, like the northern part of Wisconsin, I think it's northeast
Mm-hmm.
or northwest, away from the lake. Yeah, so it was northwest. There's huge fucking, national parks and stuff up there that are so vast. Nobody would ever know you were there.
Well, that's
Set
where they
up
keep finding people, right? Like that have took off and they were gone for like 10 years, and then they find their bones like years later.
Yeah.
Because they just went and lived in the bush.
Yeah, we have the same thing here, but like you don't have to go that far. You know what I mean? But we also have a population that's like 1/10 of the United States, but yet we
Exactly.
have more land square footage than the United States does.
Way more.
Yeah, so imagine how lost
yeah.
you can get here. You know? So I don't agree with buying anything. I cut out
You don't
a
want to
fucking
piss
piece.
the wrong person off either.
Yeah, but you
Because
cut
you
out
could disappear in the bush.
you cut out a piece of fucking whatever country or province or state you want to live in, right? That's in the
Yeah.
middle of nowhere, and set up shop. And if they want to fucking move you, make them. You know what I mean? Make it difficult. Don't just say, yeah, I'll pack everything up and fucking leave. Fuck you, buddy. Make me leave.
Make sure you take a map of all of the native reserves too, because you don't want to get caught doing it on their land.
That ain't their land. That's my land.
Well, I'm just saying about the map.
About those
They'll
people.
come through. You're in their hunting grounds.
You either join the collective or you get the fuck out. That was the biggest mistake we made here in Canada. The nice thing about being a Newfoundlander is we wiped every fucking one of them off the map.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, we don't have that issue over there. There are 0 native reserves in Newfoundland because we killed them all.
Damn.
And ones we couldn't find, we hired other natives to go hunt them down. Oh, fuck. But yeah, no land disputes there.
Yeah, because I wonder who would try to take territory over something that was like frozen for 10,000 years. Once it thaws out, who's gonna be there?
Oh well, of course the natives will try to claim it. They try to claim everything. All you have to do, they're no different than the government. Just make it more difficult for them than it's worth. No, fuck off. But yeah, it's not that warm up here, obviously.
No.
We get that whole winter thing. But
Yeah, but even you could even live through that in the winter if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, of course. I'm gonna take a bathroom break real quick. You guys talk amongst yourselves, and I'll shut up for a minute.
So how are you guys doing, man?
Yeah, cool.
I haven't talked to you in a while.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time actually, man.
It's
Was
been
it
a long
on
time, actually.
four letter Friday?
Yeah,
Maybe.
most likely.
But carrying on from your land conversation, I mean, there's now going to be problems with who owns parts of space and like the
Well,
moon,
exactly.
and how do laws work out over in space.
What do you think they're gonna do when they send people to Mars? Like, do you think they're gonna send men and women to Mars, and do you think they're gonna sterilize them before they send them so that they don't screw it up?
Not really. I think
Or
they're
they're
going to
just
try
gonna
and.
send them and let them overpopulate by accident, fuck it all up?
Um, I think it's going to be some kind of like clusterfuck of a situation. I don't imagine it going, like well and merry. Even the journey to Mars, I can imagine problems.
Yeah, well, it's a one-way trip for sure. That's what I'm saying. I think they probably would sterilize them so that they wouldn't make babies.
Well, make the first Martian.
Exactly. What kind of a what kind of baby would that be? It'd be like, it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? We have all those science fiction movies about Martians coming and invading Earth.
I think the
We
window
could be
of.
doing that.
Well, yeah. I mean, and what would happen? It just it causes more legal disputes because would these aliens be able? Would they need a visa to come over to Earth, or would they also be called Earthlings as well? I don't know. Um,
Mr. Was it Hemi Force-Speed? Mr. Hemi Force-Speed, I do not work for the bank. I'm in construction.
What'd I miss?
We were talking about rather than the land on Earth, the land on Mars, and how I think that they're going to sterilize men and women before they send them so that they don't have Martian babies that come back and fulfill the prophecies of the 1950s Martian invasion movies.
Yeah, probably.
It
The
got crazy.
downside to Mars is there's nothing there. Like, I like air, that
Well,
stuff's good.
they think they can create a lot of that shit. They just need to get the water from somewhere
Yeah, but we
that's
have
close
that
by.
stuff here. That's what I like about what Bill Maher said. Why go to Mars? We have all the nice shit here.
Yeah, but
Like,
think
we have.
about it. You remember there was a time when people were like, "Why go to Australia?"
Yeah, that's
Because they
true.
were bringing people and dumping them there.
Yeah, that's a nice prison colony.
Yeah, really.
Maybe someday I'll own one of those.
So you never know. One day they might be like, "Okay, you're going to Mars." No, you're gonna go work in the salt mines or some shit. Could be a good place to send people. But yeah, the land thing that would be interesting to see, like people like the gold rush days or some shit, trying to get there and get the stuff that's there. There's gonna be big fights over it.
I
Sorry,
think the
man.
first round is going to be completely disastrous.
The fourth round? What? I
The
missed
first
something.
round of people that want to colonize Mars, yeah, that's
Yeah.
going to be a big fail.
Yeah, like I said, Mars is not on my list of fucking things to even worry about in my lifetime.
No,
But anyway, gentlemen, I got my little guy that wants Daddy to come play with him and get him some food. So I'm going to shut this stream down, and if you guys want to continue chatting in the back, you can pop in right now, guys, and I'll invite you into the stream, and we'll shut her down.
well, Chris, I want to head out. I appreciate it, man. It's been a good conversation.
Hey, man, I'm glad you got everything working this time.
All right,
All right,
take care,
brother.
y'all.
Thank you for coming. I want to thank
Take it easy,
everybody for
Angela.
coming.
All right,
Thanks.
see you guys.
Peace
See you,
out.
brother. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming, and of course my wonderful guest tonight, Billy the Goat, for coming on. I was going to call you Billy the Host. I'm used to being on other people's. I'm sorry, I don't know. But I think we hit some definitely good talking points, man.
Yeah, good show, man. Very
It was
good.
good.
Thanks for having me on.
No, thanks for being here, buddy.
No problem.
Like I said, if you guys want to stay in, you can and shoot the shit in the back room. But I'm going to end the stream here right now, guys. And thanks to everyone in the chat for coming along.
Yep. Thank you, Chris.
We will see
Thanks,
you guys
everyone.
later.
Everyone in the chat as well, and Hidden and Anglers, Migdal.
Yep.
Thank you.
Awesome, guys.